Welcome to Goofy Harry. Today's adventure. What if Luke Castellan kidnapped baby Harry and raised him to destroy Olympus? If you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. The Thief on the Doorstep. The night smelled wrong 20 miles out. Luke Castellan had grown up on smells. Smoke and old pennies meant his father had just passed through a room. Ozone meant Zeus was in a mood. The iron reek of ichor meant something had bled that was not supposed to blade. This smell was none of those. It was something old and human, and something else beneath it that felt like a door left open in a house no one should enter. He was walking the ley line that skipped across the English countryside like a flat stone over dark water. 14 years old, limping, with a new scar on his jaw and an older one deeper on the inside of his chest. The quest he had been sent on was already a failure in the ways that mattered. His father had watched from a cloud and done nothing. The god Hermes, patron of thieves and travelers and messengers, had been too busy to show up in person for his son's first real scar. Luke had noticed. He would keep noticing for the rest of his life. The village, when it resolved out of the hedgerows, was called Godric's Hollow. There was a war memorial in the square that was also something else when he looked at it sideways. A statue of a man and a woman and a baby, cast in stone that did not belong in any century he could name. The air around the statue hummed. Wizards then. Luke had heard of them the way demigods heard of any unfriendly guild, as a list of things not to steal from. 2 streets over, he stopped walking. The smell had teeth now. A cottage at the end of a lane stood with half its roof peeled back, as though a giant hand had reached in and taken one specific thing out. The front door was open. No smoke, no fire, the burning was finished. A sycamore had shed its leaves in a perfect ring around the house, as though whatever had happened inside had forced the tree to breathe out at once. Luke knew the look. He had seen a satyr die in a clearing once, and the grass around it had died in the same neat circle. He put his hand on the gate, and the gate wanted very badly to keep him out. The wards were old magic, not the gods' kind, a woven kind, the kind wizards tied knots in. They had been cut. Something had walked through the knotwork like a knife through cheesecloth and left the ends flapping. Luke did not need to push the gate. He only needed to ask politely, and the flapping ends let him pass. Hello. He said it in Greek without meaning to, which told him he was scared. Hello. The front step had a body on it, a man maybe 30, wand still in his hand. Young, his glasses were askew. He looked like someone who had opened a door expecting the postman. Luke stepped over him because the alternative was to stop, and stopping was something his mother had done once and she had not started again for a long time. The stairs groaned under him. He did not call out again. At the top, a door hung off one hinge, and beyond the door was a nursery, and in the nursery was a woman laid out on the floor as though sleep had dropped her mid-reach. Her hair was the color of new rust. Her hand was still extended toward the crib, as though whatever she had done with it last was to reach. The crib stood whole. Luke could not remember walking across the floor to it, but when he looked down he was standing over it, and the baby inside was looking back at him. He was older than Luke had expected, old enough to sit up on his own, old enough to cry. He was not crying. He had green eyes that belonged in an older face, and a forehead that was bleeding in a clean, thin mark shaped like a bolt of lightning, and the whole room was humming the way the square outside had been humming, only louder. Luke understood with a certainty that came up through his feet that whatever had broken the wards had come into this room and tried to kill this child and had failed. He understood next that it had not left, not entirely. A sliver of it was in the boy's scar. Luke had been trained to recognize residual power. His father was the god of boundaries. You did not grow up in that house and not learn the weight of a threshold. This was a threshold. A door left just barely ajar, and behind the door something was still looking out. Outside, somewhere down the lane, a motorbike coughed. Luke lifted his head. He could hear, now that he was listening, the low rumble growing, not a mortal bike. Engine too deep, shock absorbers groaning in a way mortal mechanics couldn't produce. Flying, someone big was coming and someone small with him, and they were coming fast. He looked down at the baby. The baby looked back. The baby raised a hand and closed it, very deliberately, around Luke's thumb. Luke Castellan was 14 years old. He had been trained to kill. He had been trained to steal. He had not been trained for this. The thing in his chest, which had been slowly cooling for a year, did something that felt like a hinge turning. He did not recognize the feeling. He would, in later years, recognize it too well. "All right," he said softly, in English this time. "All right, all right." He pulled the blanket up, gathered the baby in, and did not put him down. The mother on the floor did not stir. Luke stepped around her carefully because there was a kind of respect owed to women who died reaching. On the landing he paused. The motorbike was closer. He could feel the wing beat of whatever owl was flying point for it. He had a heartbeat to decide. The easy thing was to slip out the back, leave the child for whoever was coming, walk away from this whole ruined fairy tale and get back to his quest. 14-year-old quest runners did not take infants. 14-year-old quest runners barely took care of themselves. The baby sighed against his shoulder. He weighed nothing. He smelled of soap and smoke and something else, something underneath, like a warm iron left on too long. Luke knew a weapon when he held one. He did not articulate this as a decision. He articulated it as a reflex. His father was a god who smiled sideways at the rules. His mother had tried to host the spirit of the oracle and now sat in a kitchen chair and spoke in tongues at nothing. His camp was a place where gods dropped their children and forgot their names. Olympus had broken his family. Olympus had broken the family in this house tonight too. That was the wrong smell in the air, the ancient thing that had come through Hecate's wards and tried to unmake a baby. Magic gods and sky gods, they were all the same aristocracy. They made messes. They left other people holding the pieces. Well, Luke Castellan would hold a piece. He went down the back stairs 3 at a time. The kitchen door opened onto a small garden. At the far end, a stile led into a field, and past the field was the ley line he had come in on. The hum of the motorbike was overhead now, circling. A voice, great and bellowing, the kind of voice that could not learn to whisper, was calling, "Lily, James." Oh no, oh no, no, no. Luke did not turn around. He vaulted the stile one-handed, gathered the baby tighter, and went into the dark. He did not run full out until he was half a mile into the trees. Then he ran like a son of Hermes, which is to say, he did not seem to be running, he was simply very quickly somewhere else. The ley line carried him the way a river carries a leaf. He felt it accept him and felt it accept the baby against his chest, and for a mile or so the two of them moved without moving. Then the ley line thinned, as they always did over water, and Luke came out of it into the hush of a boathouse on the coast, panting, the baby's breath warm against his collarbone. He had a stash here, a rucksack with drachmas and pounds and 2 passports, one of which could be adjusted, a travel cloak, an iron wicker basket he had stolen from a motel for reasons he could not now remember, which turned out to be exactly the right size. He put the baby in the basket. The baby did not cry. He looked up at Luke with an interest that should not have been possible at his age. The lightning scar had stopped bleeding. A thin crust of blood had dried on his forehead. Luke wet a clean sock from his bag and cleaned it very carefully, and the baby submitted to the cleaning with a patience that was, Luke thought grimly, too much like his own at that age. "What's your name, then?" Luke murmured. "Let's see. You're what, a year and a bit? You should have something. Your mother called you something." The baby blinked at him. "Right." Luke's voice softened without his permission. "No, don't tell me. I'd rather not know. I want to call you something you'll answer to because I call it and no one else." He thought about it. He thought about the square in Godric's Hollow and the statue of the family in stone. He thought about the way the wizards in that village had a different word for the world than the Greeks did. He thought about Hadrian, the emperor who had built a wall across an island and made the empire hold its breath. He liked the sound of a name that was a wall. "Hadrian," he said. "Hadrian Castellan. How does that sit with you?" The baby watched him with the solemnity of a very small judge and closed his eyes. Luke let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "All right, good man, Hadrian it is." He looked at the boy for a long time, kneeling by the wicker basket in a boathouse that smelled of creosote and salt. The motorbike far behind them now would be landing in that garden. A big man with a beard would be finding an empty crib. He would bellow. He would be heard by owls. There would be a fuss about it in a school somewhere, Luke imagined. People with pointed hats would argue in a long stone room, and while they argued, Luke would be on a boat. He stroked the top of the baby's head with one blunt finger carefully, just once. "We're going to burn their thrones, you and I," he said very quietly because it was true, because he had only just realized it was true. All of them, the ones in the sky and the ones in the stone schools and the ones with the snake and the wand, every chair they've ever sat on. We'll take them out one leg at a time. The baby's mouth made a small, peaceable shape in his sleep. Luke picked up the basket and walked down to the dock. The crossing took 3 days. He took a fisherman's berth out to a cargo ship, gave the fisherman 4 drachmas that looked enough like pounds when the man squinted, and by morning was halfway out of British waters. The cargo ship was bound for Nova Scotia. From Nova Scotia he could bum another ride south. He had done it a dozen times. He had not done it with a baby. He had not, in fact, ever held a baby until tonight. He learned. He learned the way sons of Hermes learned, which was fast and badly, and at the expense of other people's lunches. By the 2nd day he had figured out formula, a sympathetic galley cook, a bottle, warm water. By the 3rd he had figured out that Hadrian did not cry when he was wet. He turned his face toward Luke and looked at him with mild, patient disappointment until something was done about it. That was a specific talent. Luke filed it away. He spent most of those days on a milk crate by the starboard rail, watching the iron-colored Atlantic crawl past with Hadrian on his arm. He thought about the quest he was supposed to be finishing. He thought about the scar on his jaw and the scar on his chest, the one from the dragon in the western garden that his father had not helped him with, and he thought about the other new scar, the one he could not quite see yet, that the weight of this baby was scoring into him. He thought about what he would say to Chiron. He thought about what he would say to Annabeth. Annabeth, that stopped him for a while. She was 10. She adored him. If he brought this baby to camp, she would love it the way she loved all the small things that could not look out for themselves, and she would also know, with that dreadful precocious clarity of hers, that something was not right. She would ask questions. She would not stop asking until he answered. She would pry at his reasons until she found the rotten one underneath the sensible ones, and she would want to hear from his mouth why he had taken a baby. He could not tell her, not yet, maybe not ever, so the baby could not go to camp. He rearranged his plans on that milk crate idly, the way a man idly rearranges cards in a hand he cannot show. There was a house in New Hampshire he had used once, up past a town that was smaller than its name. An old Hermes cabin boy had owned it until the Labor Day he stopped being anyone's boy. The house was in the woods, its deed had passed to a shell company Luke could push a few buttons on, the wards on it still recognized him. It had electricity because a demigod with a talent for wires had once lived there. It had running water because the demigod had had a friend with a talent for pipes. It would not be warm, but Luke had stayed in worse. He could raise a boy in a house in the woods, for a while. After that he would need help, a nurse, a tutor, someone who would not ask questions. Luke knew people in that business. The Hermes cabin had always had a sideline in people who would not ask questions. The boy slept on his shoulder. The Atlantic unrolled. Late in the second night, leaning against the rail, Luke heard his father's voice. It came the way Hermes's voice always came, not out of the air but into the back of his skull, as if someone were whispering between his thoughts. Luke, he did not turn his head. I'm busy, I see. No, you don't see at all. You only see when it's convenient. Luke, go away, Luke said. You left me on a mountain 5 days ago with a dragon I had no business fighting. You don't get to check in now. There was a pause, the kind of pause that meant Hermes was gathering one of his careful, weary, paternal sentences. Luke had heard 3 of them in his life. He was fairly sure he had heard all the good ones. The child, Hermes said at last, is not yours to keep. Luke's grip on the rail tightened until his knuckles went the color of bleached rope. He was nobody's to keep, he said. I didn't see any of you down there. He is watched. Then why didn't any of the watchers stop the thing that tried to eat him? You know that is not how we work. I know exactly how you work. Luke's voice stayed even. He had learned long ago to keep his voice even when it would do damage, to let it break. You work by watching. You work by letting the mortals hurt each other, and then you show up to claim the prettier corpses. I know how you work, Dad. The last word was a slap, Luke. The voice was softer now and tireder, and it sounded almost like a man's voice rather than a god's. Give the boy to those who can keep him. A great wizard is searching for him already. Let him be found. Luke looked down at the baby in his arm. The baby was awake and watching the night with that absurd green-eyed patience of his. No, Luke said. The word hung in the air like a hook. Luke, no, he said again, and this time it was bigger. This time it was the word becoming a shape in his life, one he would build whole rooms out of later. Number, he's mine now. Go back to your cloud. The voice did not answer for a long moment. When it came back, it was very small, which was how Hermes sometimes was when he wanted to pretend to be a father. You will hurt him, Hermes said. You will hurt yourself through him. At least, Luke said, he'll know who hurt him, which is more than any of you ever gave me. The voice went. Luke felt it go the way he sometimes felt a caravan pull out of a harbor, a subtraction of weight and then nothing. He stood at the rail and breathed through his teeth until the cold had taken all the heat out of his face. Hadrian slept on his shoulder. Hadrian kept sleeping. In the morning, when the cook brought up a bottle, Hadrian drank it, and the green of his eyes was exactly the green of the rail below. They made landfall in a fog so thick the crane operators had to shout instructions to one another across 10 feet of deck. Luke slipped down the gangplank in the middle of a crowd of men in donkey jackets and was 100 yards into the port town before anyone thought to count passengers. He paid for a bus with his pound notes at a ticket window where the woman looked at his face and clearly decided she did not want to know what his face had been doing. He took the baby south in stages, bus, then the back of a milk truck, then a train on which he slept with the baby in the crook of his arm and a knife at the small of his back. He reached the New Hampshire house 5 days after Godric's Hollow. It was not what most people would call a house. It was a 1-story cabin with a tin roof and a porch that sagged on one end and a wood stove that still had 3 seasons of ash in it. The nearest neighbor was 3/4 of a mile off. The nearest town was 4 miles, with a general store that stocked formula, cloth diapers, and a surprising quantity of frozen peas. He cleaned the ash out of the stove. He lit a fire. He lined the bottom of a dresser drawer with a folded blanket and put the baby in it. The baby considered the drawer, considered Luke, and rolled over and went to sleep. That first night, while the stove clicked and the pines hushed each other outside, Luke sat on the floor beside the drawer and watched Hadrian's chest rise and fall. He had taken off his shoes. His socks were wet through and he did not care. His hand rested very lightly on the edge of the drawer. He tried to think about strategy. He tried to think about the next 3 years, about resources, about the fact that a 14-year-old demigod who had vanished off a quest was going to be the subject of rumors for a while. He tried to think about the house and what he needed to teach himself before dawn, about formula schedules and fevers and soft spots on skulls. Instead, he thought about the mother on the floor of the nursery, the rust-red hair, the way her hand had been reaching. She had stood in a doorway, that woman. She had said no to someone who did not like to be told number. She had said it with her body and not with a wand. By the time her wand had been relevant, the fight was already losing. She had done that for the baby in the drawer. She had not needed to do it. She could have run. She had not. She had stood in the doorway. Luke looked at his own hands. They were the hands of a 14-year-old thief, scarred, long-fingered, calloused on the webbing of the thumb from sword work. They had done a lot of things so far. Most of those things had been for himself. "I'll teach you," he said quietly to the drawer. He was not sure which of them he was talking to. "I'll teach you everything, sword, wings, every door that doesn't open for people like us. You'll know it all." The drawer did not answer. The baby in the drawer slept. "I'll teach you the kind of love that doesn't leave," Luke said, and then he shut his mouth because he was 14 and that sentence was bigger than him, and if he said anything else out loud he was going to start shaking. He put his cheek against the edge of the drawer. He closed his eyes. In Godric's Hollow, a motorbike sat cold in a garden, and a man with a beard was weeping into his hat, while a very old wizard stood on the lawn and watched the empty crib through the hole in the roof and said nothing at all. The old wizard's phoenix watched from the gate post and did not sing. The old wizard turned to the half-giant after a long while and said softly, "Someone has stolen him, Hagrid," and the half-giant said, "Stolen? Who'd steal little Uri, Professor?" And the old wizard said, "That is the question, isn't it, for which I believe I must prepare a very long answer." 100 miles south, the Minister of Magic was being woken up to be told that the Potters were dead. 100 miles north of that, in a cell in a tower in a northern sea, a man with a face like a wolf was being dragged in chains to a room with dementors in it, who would not be allowed to ask his name. A world and an ocean away, an infant slept in a dresser drawer in a cabin in New Hampshire, and a 14-year-old boy with a scar on his jaw and a new, larger, slower scar inside his chest dreamed of a mountain he had not yet seen, with thrones on top, all of them made of the same gold, all of them in his dream, easy to push over. Somewhere very far down, under layers of rock and punishment, something else was watching him dream. It had not been able to do much watching in a long time. Luke Castellan's grief was a very bright signal. The watcher took note of the signal, and took note of the softer, smaller signal sleeping in the drawer, and smiled a smile that had no mouth to smile with. "Interesting," said the voice under the rock. "Very." Then it settled back to wait. It had all the time in the world. Luke woke at false dawn because the baby was crying, the way babies cry in the very small hours, more in confusion than in complaint. He rolled off the floor, fumbled the bottle warm, and fed him. He held him against his shoulder and walked the cabin floor until the baby stopped. He sang a song his mother had sung him in Greek because he didn't know any lullabies in English, and the Greek ones were what he had left of her. The baby quieted. He burped him against a dish towel. He put him back in the drawer. He sat on the floor beside the drawer and waited for dawn to come in the window. Outside, a single crow landed on the porch rail. It was bigger than a crow had any business being. It cocked its head at the window, blinked one yellow eye at the cabin, and if Luke had been looking, seemed for a brief second to grin. Hermes's owl out on a last errand before giving up on him. The crow flew away. When the dawn came, Luke stood up and went to the kitchen and began to boil water. There was a list in his head that already had a dozen things on it. There would be many more lists. He did not know, yet, about a letter that would come in 10 years on an owl. He did not know that a boy named Percy Jackson would one day stand across a bronze bridge from the baby in the drawer and see, with Poseidon's sea-gray eyes, the same thing Luke was seeing now. He did not know about a girl named Annabeth Chase, younger than him, in a cabin full of charts and too early grief, who was already beginning to memorize his face the way another child might memorize a hero's. He did not know about a man named Sirius, at that hour being hauled past a dementor that would not let him explain. He did not know that the thing that had tried to kill the baby in Godric's Hollow was not, in any meaningful sense, dead, and was already beginning to crawl toward a trial of its own. He knew there was water to boil. He knew there was a fire to keep going. He knew there was a drawer to check on and a name to get used to saying. "Hadrian," he said under his breath, testing it. "Hadrian, Hadrian Castellan, come on, wake up, it's a new day." The baby in the drawer opened his green eyes, blinking at the light, and raised one small fist, and Luke found himself smiling, for the first time in a very long time, without anyone having put the smile there on purpose. "Good morning," he said. "Welcome home." Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. Lessons in Shadow. 10 years on, Hadrian Castellan held the market of Marseille in his head the way some boys held chess boards. He had the whole shape of it under the arches, fish stalls east, lavender and mint in the middle, fabric along the south wall, and the thin, mean scent that was not in any of those stalls but that he had been following with his nose since the train. There was a tourist off a cruise ship arguing prices with a woman who had been doing this for 40 years. There was a man at the North Pillar pretending to read a newspaper and doing it, Hadrian noted, with the newspaper upside down. There were 2 children dismantling a loaf of bread behind a stall and thinking themselves invisible. The man at the pillar was not watching the children. He was watching the shawled figure at the east end, near the mint. Hadrian had been watching the shawled figure since Toulouse. He moved through the crowd the way Luke had taught him to move, which was not quickly but without causing any eye to linger. He was 11 years old and tall for it, slim as a willow switch. Hair Luke had dyed deliberately out of its natural color that morning, a flat mouse brown that matched nothing and could be noticed by no one. He wore a jacket pinched from a Toulouse bookshop and trousers a size too big, cinched with a piece of cord. The cord on inspection was not cord. It was a length of braided gut string from a retired satyr's lyre which could, when snapped taut, turn any shadow within 3 feet of it briefly solid. Luke's idea. Luke had a lot of ideas. Hadrian had a ziphos down the seam of his right trouser leg and a yew wand under his left cuff. The wand was not legal. The wand was barely his. The wand's previous owner had been an aging French witch who had lost it at a nice bathhouse in a game of cards with a disgraced Beauxbatons professor named Ilwan, and the professor, when Luke had finished negotiating with him, had not asked for either back. Ilwan lived in a caravan behind their current safe house and taught Hadrian Latin in the mornings and wand work in the afternoons and drank too much Mediterranean risée in the evenings, which Luke tolerated because it kept Ilwan more or less where Luke wanted him. The shawled figure moved. Hadrian saw the movement by the bone. He had learned to look for the bones in a walk the way other children learned to look for the feet. A thing that was not a human walked on bones that didn't agree with it, and you could see the quarrel in the hips. This walk had a quarrel in the hips. He let the shawled figure move toward the east exit. He counted. He had a count he always ran at Luke's insistence. Where are all the civilians? Where are the exits? Where are the throats? He ran it fast. He timed the man at the pillar's attention span. The man looked away at a child near the fabric stall, and Hadrian used the look away to cover the 2 steps he needed to put himself in the shawled figure's wake. The figure turned down an alley off the east exit. Stone walls, laundry strung overhead, the sharp, sour smell of a restaurant kitchen. No civilians passed the first turn. Hadrian followed. In the second turn the figure stopped. The shawl slid back. The thing under the shawl was taller than it had been at the stall, and its mouth was wider than a mouth had any right to be. "Nice boy," it said in a lisp of green light. "SSS, such a nice boy, what a just delicious smell." "You don't smell me," Hadrian said mildly. "You smell what I'm carrying." The Dracaena's 2 snake halves of a lower body flickered out from under the shawl and struck the stone on either side of him. The ziphos was already in his hand. He had done it without thinking. That was the whole point, Luke had said for 4 years. Do it without thinking until the thinking catches up. He slid sideways under the snake half on the left. The Dracaena hissed and tried to bring her tail down on him. He was not where her tail came down. He was behind her. The ziphos came up in a clean short stroke, inside her guard. He did not try to take her head off because he was 11 and the geometry was wrong. He took off her grip arm at the elbow instead. The bronze bit through the scale and kept biting. She screamed. He was ready for the scream. He flinched his ears, not his shoulders. He cut again low into the crook of the second snake tail where the scale bunched thinnest. The Dracaena went down on one hip. Her mouth opened very wide. He saw the green of her tongue and the two human teeth at the top of her palate. She was about to do the thing all Dracaeni did when they were dying and angry, which was to spit their venom in a sheet. Hadrian pulled the wand out of his cuff. He did not say the incantation out loud. Luke had insisted on non-verbal casting from the beginning. The spell for binding a shadow to its caster had 3 syllables he had spent a year of afternoons learning. He flicked the wand, and a short half-moon in the Dracaena's own shadow, which had been trying to inch toward the edge of the alley, hitched and went rigid and wrapped itself, like a cloak of tar, around the Dracaena's throat. She choked on her own darkness. The venom came up and did not come out. It dribbled down her chin. He waited until she stopped moving. Then he reversed the wand and cut the shadow loose. Shadows did not like to hold. They forgot their grip almost at once. The Dracaena sagged and began, with the eagerness of her kind, to dissolve into sulfur-colored dust. Hadrian crouched. From the dust he picked out a small copper pendant which she had been wearing under the shawl and which pulsed faintly in his palm. He tucked it into the inside pocket of his jacket. He wiped the ziphos on her last shred of shawl. He put the wand back up his cuff. He straightened. The man at the pillar was standing at the mouth of the alley, newspaper forgotten. Hadrian looked at him. The man, 30-ish, weathered, dressed almost too French to be French, looked back. The newspaper drifted to the ground. "Monsieur," Hadrian said, in the clean Parisian accent Alwan had drilled into him. "I would not come closer." She left a puddle. The man did not come closer. He made a quick gesture with his hand that Hadrian recognized, an aversion sign, Old Greek, out of the Hermes cabin's repertoire. Then, without another word, he turned and walked briskly the other way. Hadrian watched him go. He memorized the walk. He was whistling when he came back out onto the market, not out of bravado. Because the whistle let him breathe evenly while his pulse came down, and because Luke had taught him to look, always, like a boy who had not been doing what he had just been doing. Luke was waiting for him at the lavender stall. He looked like a tall young man now. The 10 years had changed him into something Hadrian had noticed other women in other markets turning to look at, which Hadrian did not mind and Luke did not always notice. Luke had a scar along his jaw that came out white when he was thinking about anything unpleasant, and a scar down his forearm that came out red when he was thinking about his father, and neither was out today. He was sniffing a bundle of lavender with great apparent innocence. "Well," he said into the lavender. "One Dracaena," Hadrian said in Greek, pitched low. "Pendant." He touched his jacket. "Watcher at the pillar. Son of Hermes, I think, not ours." He saw me come out of the alley. Luke's hand stilled for a fraction of a second on the lavender. "Face," he said, tall, lean, 30, had a widow's peak, used an old Hermes averting sign, walked east. Luke put the lavender down. "Name I don't know offhand," described the walk. "Favors his left knee, keeps his weight back, trained at camp, I think, but he's been a long time gone." Luke's jaw moved. "All right, we're leaving tonight," finished the lavender. Hadrian picked up a different bundle, sniffed it, haggled with the stall woman for a price Luke had told him once was correct for a boy his age who was not being noticed, and walked back. Luke accepted the lavender, paid, and tucked it into his bag. Together they drifted out of the market and through 4 alleys and up a staircase and over a rooftop and down into a courtyard that smelled of orange peels, and then by a route Hadrian could have followed blindfolded, back to the caravan where Alwan was pickling the season's first fennel. "Did you kill her cleanly?" Luke asked as they walked. "Yes." "Good. I used the shadow hitch." "Good. Did you say it out loud?" "Number." "Good." Luke put a hand on the back of Hadrian's neck, briefly, warm. "Did she look at you like you mattered?" Hadrian thought about it. "No," he said. "Good. Draceni have taste. If one had looked at you like you mattered, we'd have a bigger problem." Luke's hand dropped. "Pendant pulses how?" "Every 3 seconds, warm, bronze, not Stygian. And don't touch it with bare skin again until Alwan S. looked at it. He had a type of these back at school." All right, they walked another block in easy silence. This, Hadrian thought dimly, was what the good afternoons felt like. Luke in the mood to be pleased, a kill behind him, the sun on the backs of their necks. Then Luke said, as if it cost him nothing, "Your father would have been proud." Hadrian looked up at him. Luke kept his eyes on the middle distance. This was how he talked about such things, on the days he talked about them at all, as though he were discussing someone else's weather. He was a good man, Luke said, rude and quick and a bit pleased with himself. He was a wizard. A one-beat pause, a very good one. Hadrian said nothing. He had trained himself over a long time not to ask questions while Luke was sharing because the questions stopped the sharing. "Your mother was a wizard too," Luke said, "red hair." "The green I mean when I say your eyes are green, those were hers. You keep saying that, because it's true and I want you to be able to picture her. A softer beat. She stood in a doorway for you. She died for you." "I didn't lie about that. A wizard tyrant killed them, Hadrian. A wizard tyrant with a white face and no nose. He killed them because he had been told you would one day end him. He did not finish you because your mother stood in the door." Hadrian walked for half a block with that. "Did the wizards come," he said at last, "to save her?" Luke said, "Number they knew where she was. They had placed her under what they call a charm. It failed. It failed because someone they trusted betrayed her." "They didn't come because they were arguing in a castle up north. Did the gods come?" Luke's jaw twitched. "No," he said. Hadrian nodded. "That is why," Luke said, "we are going to hurt them." Both of them, Hadrian said, both of them. Luke's hand settled on his shoulder this time. Eventually, in order, they walked another block. Thank you for telling me, Hadrian said. Luke made the small, dismissive noise that meant he was more pleased by the thanks than he wanted to be. The caravan was silver-sided, parked under a cork oak in a field the local council had forgotten about 6 decades ago. Luke had a long arrangement with the landowner, which the landowner did not remember having made. Ilwan was outside in a rocking chair with a clay pot of brine and a pile of fennel and a paring knife. The boy is intact, Ilwan said without looking up. Excellent. The boy continues to be intact, a banner weak. Ilwan, Luke said, we leave tonight, pack 2 bags. I pack 1 bag, MC'er, and the bag is always packed. Ilwan waved a hand. Where do we go? Portugal. Of course we go to Portugal, of course. There's a problem. My last husband is in Portugal. Your last husband is dead. Precisely my point. Ilwan neatly sliced the top off another fennel bulb. He will expect me not to be there. That is the only reason to go to Portugal, because one is expected not to be. Luke smiled, briefly. Ilwan was the only person other than Hadrian who could still make him smile out of the side of his face like that. It was, Hadrian thought, one of the real kindnesses in their household. Pendant, Luke said. Boy has one. Would you look at it for us? Ilwan pointed with his paring knife at a clean cotton cloth on the upturned crate beside him. Hadrian drew the pendant out, set it down on the cloth, and stepped back. Ilwan bent over it, squinting, moving a long finger over its surface without touching. Ilwan said, good or bad? Professional. This is a carrier. She was running a message from one of your mother's sisters to one of your father's sisters, Moan petty, mythologically speaking. A relay. Which means someone in your father's pantheon, Ilwan pointed the paring knife at Luke, is talking to someone in the wizard's pantheon and they did not want the post office to know about it. Luke's face had gone very still. Hecate, he said, possibly another, your uncle Apollo and Trelawney's ilk, for instance. Ilwan shrugged. I would have to open it. I will not open it here. It would noise up the wards. Take it with us. Open it in Portugal. Ah yes, of course, Portugal. Where one is not expected to be. Ilwan picked up the pendant with the cotton cloth and slid it into a lead-lined pouch. I shall make tea before I pack. Anyone? Tea, said Hadrian. Tea, said Luke, and then the both of you listen to me about 2 things before we drive. They took tea on the caravan step. It was a French country blend with too much lemon. Hadrian sat on the step and Luke sat on an overturned pail, and Ilwan leaned in the caravan's doorway and held his cup in both hands like an elderly widow, although he was not in fact an elderly widow, merely a 36-year-old disgraced wizard who gave every appearance, when he drank tea, of being something else. 1, Luke said, the boy did well today. Congratulations, Monsieur Castellan, Ilwan said gravely. 2, someone at the market today was a son of Hermes, not ours. Watchers from camp, possibly. Ilwan looked up. Luke nodded, reading his look. We've been stationary too long, 3 months, my mistake. Or they are getting smarter, Ilwan said. One hopes. Either way we move. Luke turned to Hadrian. If we are seen leaving, if he comes back with one of his cousins or an older cousin, you do not fight. You run, you make for the sea. That's what the court is for. If you have to choose between running and the old woman in the fish stall, you run and leave the old woman. I'd rather not leave the old woman, Hadrian said evenly. Luke's eyes flicked to him. I know you wouldn't, Luke said, and something very slight and very warm and very worried went through his face at once. That's good. That's the part of you that isn't good. Keep it. But when I say run, you run, and we will make sure the old woman is fine some other way. Yes, yes. Say it again. Yes, sir. Good man. Hadrian sipped the lemony tea and watched a sparrow dip into the dust beside the caravan's wheel. A little later, when Ilwan had gone inside to pack his 1 bag for the 5th time that year, and Luke had gone around to check the caravan's battery, Hadrian sat alone on the step and watched the sparrow become 2 sparrows and then 3. Then one of the sparrows landed on his knee and was not a sparrow at all. It was a thin young man in a gray traveler's hat and winged sandals, perhaps 20 or 50 or 2,000 years old depending on the angle of the light. His face did not quite match itself frame to frame. One eye was merry and one eye was tired. He sat somehow where the sparrow had been sitting without having gotten bigger. Good afternoon, the young old man said softly. Hadrian did not move. He was the one thing Luke had truly trained him for in advance, the approach of a god. When you feel the air go thin and some small bird that should not speak speaks, you do not run, you do not fight. You bow your head a hair and you keep your hands loose and you do not offer anything, not your name, not your thought, not your love. Good afternoon, Hadrian said. The young old man smiled. He had his son's smile. Hadrian saw it and his breath caught very briefly in a place under his collarbone. Don't worry, Hermes said. I'm not here. That's the nature of this visit. I'm not here and I will have forgotten that I wasn't here by sundown. I'm just looking at you. Hadrian kept his hands loose. At me, sir, at you. Hermes's voice softened. At what's been made out of you, which is not quite the same thing. You've grown. I have, not as much as he has. My son, a small, wry, hurt smile. He's carrying you on top of himself. You don't weigh nothing, you know. He's stronger than I gave him credit for. He's stronger than you give him credit for on most things, sir, Hadrian said before he could help it. Hermes laughed under his breath. Yes, I imagine he is. He tilted his head. The young man in him went away for a second, and what was left was only the god, and the god looked at Hadrian for one full long moment without pretending to be a man at all. Hadrian held his gaze. It was harder than fighting the Dracena. He did it. Do you know, Hermes said softly, what you are? I am Hadrian Castellan, Hadrian said. That is what you are called, not what you are. Then I don't know, sir, and I don't think you do either. Hermes did smile at that. It was a small, weary smile. No, he said, no, I don't know, not yet. You're not no one has cut. A wizard child, a god trace, and something else in your scar that's older than either. A thing we were not supposed to let happen, and now a fourth thread, which is my son's teaching, wound through you. He paused. There's a lot of you. Yes, sir. I could take you away from him. Hadrian felt Luke come around the side of the caravan. He felt him stop at the corner where he could see. He felt Luke's hand settle on the hilt of the sword hidden at his hip under his jacket. He did not look. He kept his eyes on Hermes. You wouldn't, Hadrian said. Hermes raised one eyebrow. Wouldn't I? You won't, Hadrian said, because you didn't. 10 years ago on a boat in the Atlantic, you spoke to him and you asked him to give me away, and when he said no, you let him keep me. You gave me up then. You don't get to come back for me now. Hermes looked at him. He has taught you to hate me, the god said softly. Very well. No, sir. Hadrian's voice stayed level. I worked most of that out on my own. He only confirmed it. Hermes, after a long moment, laughed. It was a sad laugh. He stood up off Hadrian's knee and was a bird again briefly, and then the bird was not even there. The faint, dry, quinine smoke smell of his passage drifted on the step for a few seconds and was gone. Luke came around from the caravan, white around the mouth. Hadrian, he's gone, Hadrian said. What did he? He wanted to look at me. He said he wasn't here. I don't think he'll remember being here. He wasn't a threat. He's always a threat, yes. But he wasn't being one today. Luke breathed out very slowly through his nose. He sat down on the step beside Hadrian. He put one hand briefly on the back of Hadrian's head, and then he pulled it away as though he had caught himself doing something indulgent. What did you say to him? Luke said at last. That he gave me up a long time ago, Hadrian said, and that he doesn't get to come back. Luke stared at the sparrowless dust. You said that to him? Yes, to his face. I believe so. Hadrian, Luke's voice cracked a quarter-inch. I could throttle you. I could also kiss your forehead. I am choosing to do neither. Hadrian said nothing. He had learned a long time ago that these were the moments Luke needed in silence. After a while, Luke stood up. He did not look at Hadrian. He walked away around the caravan again to check the battery that was already fine. Hadrian watched a sparrow that was only a sparrow this time come down and drink from a puddle of lemony teal Juan had spilled, and he thought about the god's one sad long laugh, and about how close he had come for 1 second to saying, "Sir, my grandfather," and getting an answer, and how glad he was that he hadn't. That was the kind of answer you only got to ask once. Across the ocean, in a meadow above Long Island Sound, a centaur stood at the edge of a field and watched a tall blonde girl of 15, swinging a sword too large for her at a straw dummy too small for the sword. Again, Chiron said. Stop shouting at it. I am not shouting at it, Annabeth said through her teeth. She struck the dummy. Straw exploded in a neat diagonal. You are yelling inside, Chiron said mildly, which is a louder form of shouting again. She struck again. The dummy lost its left arm. Chiron leaned on the fence. His face was gentle in the late summer light, which was how it always was when he was about to say something he did not want to say. Annabeth, he said. I am going to ask you a thing, and I would prefer you not answer in front of the straw. Ask it. When did he last come to see you? The straw dummy lost most of its remaining torso. 4 weeks ago, she said, between cuts. He came for an afternoon. He brought me a book, cut, on European castle architecture, cut. He left at sunset and he was gone by morning. Did he say where he was going? He said Lisbon. He said Lisbon the way he says Reykjavik and Dresden and every other city he doesn't go to. Chiron stroked his beard. Annabeth, I want you to stop striking the dummy for a moment. She stopped striking the dummy. I believe, Chiron said slowly, that he has not been honest with us for some time. She did not turn around. She held the sword point down in the grass. I know, she said quietly. I have been slow to see it. No slower than me. We will not speak of it to the others, Chiron said. Not yet, but I want you aware. Whatever he is doing out there, it is not the quest he has been telling us it is, and whatever he has been doing for a long time, longer than your lifetime. Annabeth was silent for a long moment. "He has a secret," she said at last. "Yes, a big one, I believe so." She nodded once to herself. Then she raised the sword and struck the straw dummy, and took its head off in a perfectly clean backswing that Chiron had not yet taught her, and walked off the field without looking at him. Chiron watched her go. An owl that was not only an owl blinked once from the fence rail and flew away after her at a thoughtful altitude. "Be gentle with her, sister," Chiron said to the vanishing owl. "She is 15 and she knows something terrible and she has not yet named it. She will soon." In New Hampshire, in the pines behind a silver caravan that at that moment sat in France, on the same night that the caravan rolled south for Lisbon, the wards on an old cabin with a tin roof hummed briefly and recognized, for the first time in 9 months, a visitor. The visitor was a fox. The fox came up to the porch, sniffed the rotten boards, sneezed politely, and sat down on its haunches to watch the door. It sat there for an hour. It did not move. No one came out of the cabin because no one lived in the cabin anymore. Luke had left the cabin 8 years ago when Hadrian began to walk and had not been back. The fox seemed to know this. The fox waited another hour anyway. At the end of the second hour, the fox got up, stretched, and trotted away into the pines, and a long shadow peeled off the porch rail and went with it. The shadow did not belong to anything mortal. It was too old. It had too many joints in it. It had been wearing the roof of the porch for 10 years without anyone seeing it, and now it was going home to report. Deep under the rock, very far down, the thing that had no mouth smiled a little wider. "There you are," Kronos whispered, "across a mountain range and an ocean and a dozen wards. Oh yes, there you are, good boy." And it was not clear to anyone listening whether the thing under the rock meant the son of Hermes or the son of James Potter, or whether it saw any difference. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. 2 letters. The first letter found them in a fishing village north of Porto. It came at sundown, low over the red-tiled roofs, on the back of a barn owl that had clearly been flying for longer than it wanted to. The owl circled the caravan twice, expressed its professional opinion of the wards, landed on the windowsill without breaking them, and presented a creamy envelope with a green seal to the first person it saw. The first person it saw was Ilwan, who was cleaning cod. Ilwan looked at the owl looked at Ilwan. Ilwan looked at the letter. The owl shifted its weight from one foot to the other. "No," Ilwan said politely. The owl blinked. "No, it is not for me. I know it is not for me. I know every ward in this caravan, mon ami, and I know there is not a single one on me that would tell an owl I am the addressee. Go try the boy. In the back. Green eyes, too quiet, please." The owl hopped. It flew through the narrow hallway of the caravan and into the little back compartment where Hadrian was oiling the ziphos on his knee, and it presented the letter to him with what Hadrian, if he had not known better, would have said was relief. Hadrian looked at the envelope. It was addressed in acid green ink, in a hand that was sure of itself in a very antique way. The address was accurate down to a frightening number of decimal places. Mr. H. Castellan, the second bunk, the silver caravan, the field behind the goat, shed half a kilometer east of a Furada, northern Portugal. On the reverse, in wax, was a coat of arms. A lion, an eagle, a badger, a snake, and a large calligraphic H. Hadrian turned the letter over in his hand twice. He set the oily ziphos down on a cloth. He walked out to the front of the caravan where Luke was splitting kindling with a hatchet, and he held the letter up. Luke saw the seal. The hatchet paused in mid-arc for perhaps a quarter of a second. Then he completed the cut cleanly. He straightened. "Open it," he said. Hadrian slid a thumb under the seal. The wax broke with a small, clean snap. "Dear Mr. Castellan, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on 1 September. We await your owl by no later than 31 July. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress." And clipped to the inside of the envelope was a second letter, on a different kind of parchment, in a different hand, and reading, "Dear Mr. Castellan, I am to understand that an owl has found its way to you despite what I must confess was a certain effort on my part to obscure the matter. Welcome indeed, and also I would very much like to know where you have been. Please forgive an old man his preoccupations. I look forward to making your acquaintance, whatever name you now choose to carry to my door. Yours, Albus Dumbledore, Headmaster." Hadrian read both letters twice. Then he handed them without comment to Luke. Luke read them twice. Then he sat down on the chopping block and put a hand over his mouth. "He knew," Luke said softly, not to Hadrian, to himself and to the hatchet and to the cooling evening. "Of course he knew, of course he did. I took too long. I let you get this old. Luke, I did this wrong." Luke looked up. "No, you didn't," Hadrian said. Luke stared at him. "You kept me alive," Hadrian said, "for 10 years, in a world where a number of things are trying to eat me. You kept me hidden from 2 separate kinds of watchers. The one who found me is a wizard who has been looking for 11 years. That is not a mistake. That is a stalemate you won a long time. Luke did not speak for a moment. When did you get smarter than me? He said at last. I haven't. I only had to grow up inside your arguments. After a while they're easy to reproduce. Luke snorted. It was a painful, surprised sound, and there was love in it. Hadrian sat down on the ground beside the chopping block and put his back against it. The owl, having discharged its duty, was eyeing Ilwan's cod. Ilwan was explaining to it courteously that the cod was spoken for. What do we do? Hadrian said. I don't know yet, Luke said. Give me the night. He gave him the night. In the night the second letter came. It came as such things do, on feet and not on wings. Hadrian woke near 4 in the morning to the small, unmistakable sound of something hoofed stepping very carefully on the pebbles at the edge of the field. He lay very still on his bunk. He listened. The hooves came closer. Something breathed in a way that was not only a horse and not only a goat. The satyr was maybe 15 yards off. Hadrian got out of his bunk. He did not put on his shoes. Shoes creaked. He put the wand up his sleeve and the ziphos down his pant leg, and he slid out the back of the caravan into the dew-wet grass without shaking the door. Luke was already outside. He was standing with his back to the caravan and his arms crossed in shirt sleeves, with the bronze of his sword drawn and hanging low at his side. He had not put on shoes either. Stop there, he said softly into the dark. The hooves stopped. Show yourself. A shape separated from the shadow of the goat shed. A thin, red-bearded satyr whose horns were barely out, with a nervous set to his mouth. He was maybe 18 in satyr years and maybe 12 in human ones, and his eyes were flicking. Hadrian noticed, back and forth between Luke's sword and Hadrian's face. Please don't, the satyr said. I just came to look. At him. Who sent you? Grover sent me. Please don't kill me. He's a kid. I'm a kid. We're both kids. Luke's mouth did something bitter. Hadrian read it and did not like it. Why you? Luke said. Because I'm new, because I'm not on Chiron's map yet, because I work the Alps, because 3 months ago a scent came through the Alps like a bell. The satyr's hands were shaking. I'm sorry, I've been following it for 3 months, I told Grover. He told Mr. D. Mr. D told no one, which means Mr. D thinks it's important. So I was to come and to look and to say there's a bed for him in the Hermes cabin because you are there, obviously you are there, and you are a Hermes boy, and I am not a Hermes boy, Luke said quietly. The satyr stopped talking. Luke took 1 step forward. Hadrian from the shadow of the caravan said, Luke. Luke did not look at him. Luke, Hadrian said again, more softly. The satyr was trembling. His hands were empty. He had come alone. He had come, Hadrian thought, as a nervous messenger. He had come, perhaps, because he'd been told to come by a friend and had not quite wanted to refuse. He was 18 in his kind's years. He had not known what he was being sent into. Luke, Hadrian said for the 3rd time, and this time Luke looked. Hadrian stepped out into the grass. Hello, he said. What's your name? The satyr blinked very rapidly. Benoit, he said. Benoit, Hadrian said. Are you from the Pyrenees? The Alps? Well, I was born in the Pyrenees. I work the Alps now. Your hooves are Pyrenees hooves, I can see. Do you know you have more wool than most of the Alps satyrs? Benoit looked down at his own legs, baffled, as though he had not been told this. I'm going to do you a favor, Benoit, Hadrian said calmly. I'm going to send you home. You're going to tell Grover that you found a demigod in Portugal who has a wizard for a teacher and who does not wish to attend Camp Half-Blood at this time. You are going to tell him that the demigod is Hermes trained. You are going to give him a description that leaves out the color of my eyes. You are going to do all of this and you are not going to come back. In return, I am going to ask Luke not to kill you and he is going to agree. Is this fair? Yes, Benoit said. Yes. Oh gods, yes, yes. Luke looked at him. Luke's jaw worked. All of what he just said, Luke said, minus the eye color, pause, plus a detail. You will tell Grover that the boy is moving south, Greece. You will have seen him on a train to Greece. South, Greece, a train, yes. You will not tell anyone you saw me. I did not see anyone but the boy, sir. Benoit's voice climbed half an octave. I have not seen anyone else here. There is not anyone else here. Luke's mouth softened a bare quarter-inch. Good satyr, he said. Go. Benoit went. He crashed through the hedgerow back the way he had come, at a very unmythological pace, and the sound of his hooves receded down the dirt road, and the pebbles settled, and the night was the night again. Luke turned, finally, and looked at Hadrian. You cost me something there, he said evenly. I know. That boy is going to go home and he's going to tell Grover, and Grover, whatever he does with South or Greece, is going to tell Chiron the truth, which is that you are out here with me, and eventually Chiron is going to do something about it. I know, you chose that. Yes, for what? For him, Hadrian said. Luke looked at him for a long time. Hadrian could not quite read his face. You know, Luke said at last, that this is what they will use. Who? Anyone, everyone. When they come for you, they will say, he is soft, he is not what Luke made him, he has a hinge in him, they will find the hinge and they will push on it. Yes, and let them, Hadrian said, they won't push hard enough. Luke's eyes searched his face for a while, then he shook his head once as if to dismiss something he did not want to name, and he sheathed his sword. Come back inside, he said. Sleep, we have a letter to answer tomorrow. They went back inside. Hadrian lay awake in his bunk and listened to Luke in the other end of the caravan, not sleeping either. He could hear Luke's breathing. It was the kind of breathing Luke did when he was arguing with himself. Somewhere under Hadrian's breastbone, the thing in his scar was, and this was new, and this was not welcome, paying attention. He had felt it for years without naming it. A thinness, a cold place, a suggestion that when he tried to look at himself there was an older face looking back. He had learned to ignore it. Tonight, after the satyr, after Benoit's pale mouth and Luke's pale jaw, it was humming. A faint, amused humming, as though something inside him had just watched him perform a very interesting trick. Hadrian sat up. He pulled his knees to his chest. He looked at the dark curtain that separated his bunk from the rest of the caravan. He put his hand on the scar on his forehead and felt very carefully for the seam. It was there, a ring of thin, not quite skin. When he pressed on it, the cold ran down through his jaw. Stop that, he said softly to nothing in the caravan, to everything in him. Stop that, you are nothing, you are a smudge, you will not hum at me. The hum went away. Hadrian lay back down and did not sleep. He was not the only one dreaming that night. 100 leagues under the Mediterranean, under bedrock that no one had mapped in 3,000 years, something slow and patient turned an eye. It was not an eye exactly, it was the memory of an eye that had been refining itself for millennia until it had become, effectively, attention. It attended tonight to Luke Castellan, who was lying on a narrow bunk with his arm across his face. Luke did not answer at first. He had learned not to. He had heard this voice for 2 years now, and the voice had learned not to press. Luke, I felt him. Luke swallowed. The boy has 2 shadows. The voice went on, unhurried. Your teaching and mine. I want you to pay attention to the second. It hummed tonight. That is excellent. That is better than excellent. Do you know what it is? Your little boy's forehead. A scar, Luke said in the dark. A door, one of 7. The wizard who cannot die split himself into 7 pieces, and one of them went, by accident, into your boy. It is small, but it is clever. It is waking up. It is learning his voice. Luke did not say anything. When he hums, Kronos said, please, let him hum. Do not silence him, do not teach your boy to strangle him. He is useful. Useful how? Hermes cannot read what I hide behind that scar, neither can the wizards. It is a blind spot inside a blind spot. I can speak to the boy through it in time. You will not mind that, will you, Luke, your boy speaking to me? He will not speak to you, Luke said. His voice was careful and even. I will not let him. Ah, love, the voice smiled. Luke could hear the smile. Love is a very good chain, Luke. I will use yours. He is yours. He is mine through you. Do you understand? I understand. Will the letter come to anything? Yes, he will go to the school. Good. A satisfied pause. Good. The school is ripe. Let him go. Let him meet the old man. Let him meet the piece of the other shadow walking around in that place. Let him meet his own face in the mirror and choose not to flinch. That is what I want, a boy with no flinch. Oh yes, yes, Luke, you have done well. I have not done this for you. I know, Kronos said softly. That is why you have done it so well. And the voice let him alone. Luke lay under his arm and breathed through his teeth for a long time. In the other bunk, Hadrian lay, sleeping at last, with his small, pale hand open on the pillow. Luke did not look at the hand. He could not look at the hand. He closed his eyes and tried to think honestly about the school. He decided 3 things before dawn. 1. Hadrian would go. Hogwarts was a reservoir of power, of allies, of materiel, of information, and the one place in either world where his pantheon was uninterested. Old ones did not scry into that castle. The wards were not their kind of wards. It would be the safest place for Hadrian for 3/4 of every year. It would also be, this was the harder truth, the place where Hadrian could become someone Luke's own plans might outgrow. That was a risk. Luke would take the risk. 2. Hadrian would go under his own name. Hadrian Castellan would not pass in that world. The green ink had come to him as Mr. Castellan, but Dumbledore's letter had said, whatever name you now choose to carry to my door, which meant Dumbledore knew. There was no hiding now. Hadrian would walk onto the train as Harry Potter. He would be what the wizarding world wanted to see. Luke would become a shadow on his own papers. No one would connect the boy in Slytherin robes to any demigod anywhere. 3. Luke would not go to Diagon Alley. He could not be seen there. Ilwan would go with Hadrian. Ilwan had been blacklisted out of Diagon Alley 2 decades ago for reasons Ilwan did not discuss. Ilwan would return to the alley, as he had said once, with a grim smile, with dignity and a godson. Hadrian would be that godson. It was, Luke thought, at least partly true. He got up before sunrise. He made tea. He was washing the teapot when Hadrian came out of the back, barefooted on the cold linoleum, eyes clear. You decided something, Hadrian said. I did. You're going to let me go. I am. Hadrian sat at the small, bolted-down table and accepted a cup. Luke. I want you to tell me something true about my mother. Luke stopped washing the teapot. What in particular, he said, not turning. I want to know her name. Luke did turn then. He leaned his hip against the counter. His face was drawn and old for 24. Lily, he said. Lily Potter, born Evans, red hair, green eyes, as I have told you. She died with her hand out. That is the true thing I know about her, the truest. That is the one I would give you. And my father, James Potter, glasses, quick wand. His last act was to open a door on a man he knew was going to kill him, so that you and she would have 2 more seconds. Those were a very generous 2 seconds. Hadrian looked at his cup. I want to use them, he said at last. Those seconds. Yes, for what? I don't know yet, Hadrian said. Something worth them. Luke did not answer. He brought his own cup to the table and sat down across from him. They drank in silence. In the window the sky was going pink over the Atlantic. Ilwan will take you to London, Luke said after the 3rd cup. To Diagon Alley. He will buy you what the list says. He will buy you some things the list does not say. I'm going to write him a long letter about the things the list does not say. You will go to King's Cross alone, because Ilwan cannot cross into the platform. I will not come, but I will be in London, watching from the shadows, like a good boy of my father's. Luke's mouth bent. Yes, and when I am there, you write me once a week. A normal way, a normal letter to an address you will memorize tonight and never write down. You will make an impression on the other children. You will make a specific impression on the adults. You will pass tests. You will read books we haven't been able to get outside of that library. You will, Hadrian. He stopped. You will watch the old man. Dumbledore, he wrote you by hand. He put his name under McGonagall's. He wanted you to know he was there. He has been looking for you for 10 years. Every time he meets you, he will be looking at you for traces. He will be very gentle and very interested and very patient, and he will be reading you for anything that is not what he expected. What does he expect? He does not know. That is his weakness. He is expecting a child he did not shape, which means he is going to be surprised. Use the surprise. Do not be the child he thinks you are. Do not be a child I have shaped either. Be a boy. Be a curious, polite, well-read, frightened, slightly lonely first year. Let him read that. Let him soften on you. Let him start making allowances for you he ought not to make. You want me to charm him. I want you to outlast him. Understood. Luke's mouth went tight at one corner. The scar on his jaw whitened briefly and went back. Hadrian, yes, if he's, Luke stopped, if the old man is kind, let him be kind, don't flinch from it. I need you to know something about kindness. It is a currency. It does not cost them much. It does not have to cost you anything either. Take what is given, do not give back. All right, that's an order. I hear you, sir. Luke watched him over the rim of his cup. He did not smile, he did not frown. Good man, he said, and the 2 words were warm, and they were also an instruction Hadrian had been hearing since before he could walk. He did not flinch from that either. A fortnight later, Ilwan and Hadrian walked out of the leaky cauldron and into Diagon Alley. Hadrian had spent the fortnight with a book, several books. Ilwan's satchel, the one he kept in a shelf Hadrian had not been allowed to open until the train went north, turned out to contain, among other things, a reader called The Wizarding World for Clever Foreigners Who Have Been Placed Abroad, which Ilwan had written himself at 23 and pronounced when Hadrian asked, still the only useful thing I have published. Hadrian had eaten the book in 2 days. The second fortnight he had spent on a much older book called A Brief Introduction to the British Wizarding Gentry, which Ilwan had procured in Porto at great cost and no small amount of embarrassment, and on a 3rd book called A Magical Child's First Dueling, which Ilwan had in fact pinched off a shelf in the back of the Porto Wizards' Café while pretending to admire the gold plate on a dessert trolley. By the time Ilwan opened the brick wall at the back of the leaky cauldron and stepped through into the alley with his hand on Hadrian's shoulder, Hadrian's face was, Ilwan thought approvingly, exactly the face a clever, polite, curious, slightly lonely 11-year-old would wear. It was even somewhat genuinely his. They bought the books. They bought the cauldron and the scales and the standard robes and a rat in a cage because Hadrian thought it would be useful, and Luke, in a long letter, had recommended a rat, quiet, hides well, kills roaches, will not try to eat your fingers the way the owls here want to. They bought potion ingredients, most of which Ilwan sniffed and haggled over. They bought the wand. The wand was the interesting stop. Hadrian had been using Ilwan's borrowed wand for 4 years. His own wand from Ollivander's was a new beast. Mr. Ollivander, who Ilwan had specifically referred to in advance as a complication, looked at Hadrian for several seconds with his very pale eyes and seemed to recognize him. He did not speak his recognition. He brought out a tall stack of boxes. 13 minutes later, after Hadrian had upset a vase and set fire briefly to a stuffed owl, Ollivander said, in a tone so quiet Ilwan thought for a moment he was praying, Ah, yes, I thought we might meet this one. He drew out a narrow box. Holly, he said, 11 inches, and the core, Mr. Castellan, is a phoenix feather, an unusual feather. The phoenix who gave it gave only one other. That other feather's wand, I might mention, gave you that scar. He tapped his own forehead without looking at Hadrian S. Hadrian did not flinch. Hadrian did not blink. Hadrian, in the part of him that was not Hadrian and not Harry but something under both, felt the scar warm and then cool. The hum in him that had come back after Benoit's visit stirred for a moment and went still again, considering. He held out his hand. The holly wand jumped into it the way a sword arm jumps into a pommel. It was warmer than the yew. It had a sound, a small dim ring, which Ollivander and Elwan both heard and pretended not to hear. Curious, Ollivander said with the shy enthusiasm of a very old man watching a very old joke land. Curious, curious. Oh, I do hope we live to see great things from this wand, Mr. Castellan. I hope so too, sir, Hadrian said politely. Thank you. Elwan paid. They left. In the alley, Elwan bent down and took Hadrian by the shoulder and murmured into his ear, "Never come back to that shop without me, and never alone, moan Petty. He knows your face." He does. Good, now. Ice cream. They had ice cream at Florian Fortescue's. Hadrian had raspberry. Elwan had 3 scoops of something he said was called Tragedy de la Vanille, and Hadrian decided not to investigate. They watched the alley rush by. A very tall, very dark-haired boy with robes trimmed in green and a face like a heron looked sideways at Hadrian as he passed, and Hadrian looked sideways back, and each of them did not quite nod. "You will meet him on the train," Elwan murmured. "That is Marcus Flint, old family, pure-blood Quidditch captain, I think, a bully as a boy, I am told, a man by 16, mark him." Marked. That girl there in the bookstore, in the blue coat. Hadrian looked. "She is a greengrass, Daphne, I think, clever and very cold. She will be a first year, not your enemy, possibly your neighbor, mark her." Marked. The red-headed family descending upon the quill shop with a noise entirely out of proportion to their number. Elwan's mouth twitched. "The Weasleys, poor, numerous, decent. Mark them in pencil, not in ink. They will try to like you. Some will succeed, some won't." Marked in pencil. "Good. Eat your ice cream, moan Petty. You have 2 weeks of reading left." 2 weeks later at King's Cross, Hadrian stood on a flagged platform with a trolley and a rat in a cage, and a new wand up one sleeve and an old Ziphos, slightly shorter now for an 11-year-old boy's reach, down the other. He wore a Muggle school sweater and a pair of dark trousers. His hair was back to its natural color for the first time in weeks. It was black, and it had his father's cowlick in the back, and he did not know what to do with it, and he had not bothered. The lightning scar was clean on his forehead. He was, for the first time in his life, publicly Harry Potter. He took a breath. He ran at the wall. He came out the other side onto a scarlet-engined platform full of steam and children and parents he did not have, and he stood for one long moment and looked at it, at all of it, at this whole other country he had been stolen from. Somewhere behind a pillar he did not look for, Luke Castellan stood in a Muggle cap and a Muggle jacket with his hands in his pockets and watched him. Luke was not supposed to be there. Luke had wanted to be there. He was there. Hadrian did not wave. Hadrian put his hand on his trolley and pushed it toward the train. "Let's see," he said under his breath, to no one, to everyone, to the thing in his forehead, to the father who was not his, to the father who was, to the school and the castle and the old man, and to whatever else was waiting. "Let's see who tries to claim me first." He stepped onto the Hogwarts Express. Chapter 3 and Chapter 4, The Boy in the Castle. The Sorting Hat hated him on sight. It was not hate exactly. Hate would have been simpler. The hat, when it was lowered over his head by a straight-backed woman in tartan, took half a second to adjust and then went entirely still in a way the other children had not made it go. "Well," it said after a beat. "Well, well, well. Hadrian Harry now." He was reminding himself of the name every time his inner voice slipped, sat very still on the stool. He kept his spine long and his hands loose on his knees, and he let the hat look, because he had spent 2 weeks rehearsing the face of a slightly frightened, slightly lonely first year, and he was reasonably sure it was holding. "Oh, you've practiced," the hat said, amused. "You've rehearsed this one in the mirror. Oh, that's lovely. Let me see past the rehearsal now, dear. Move." A cold fingertip of thought touched the inside of his forehead. Harry opened very carefully the doorway he wanted the hat to look through, not the whole room, just the doorway. He had learned from Elwan that the thing a Clumens did was to offer decoys, well-furnished, plausible, full of a believable version of the self. He offered the hat the boy who had opened the letter on the caravan step, a boy who had heard about wizards and wanted very much to be one, a boy afraid of doing badly and afraid of being sent home. That boy was not, in fact, fictional. Hadrian kept that boy alive inside himself the way a ship carried a rat. It might be useful. "A boy," the hat said, tasting the room. Yes, good furniture, good tea service, good bookshelves, a fire. What is upstairs? Nothing, sir, Harry said silently. Dear, 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 the hat said, upstairs is everything. Oh, now I am interested. Let me just, the hat found the stairs. The hat went up. The hat stopped at the landing. There are, the hat said after a long moment very quietly, 3 doors on this landing, child. Are there, sir? Yes, a green door, a red door, a black door, a beat. One of them is ajar. Which one? The black one. And something behind it is watching me, something old, something small. It is. I have not met this before. I have, sir. Have you? The hat said in a very dry voice. Yes, you are not afraid of it. No, sir. The hat sat there for a while. Harry could hear faintly, below the hat's internal voice, the other sound, the humming he had heard once in the caravan and twice since, which he had started to think of privately as the smudge. The smudge was humming an interested hum. Something was noticing that something else was noticing it. Harry held very still between them. The hat said again, all right, child, let me see the red door. It opened the red door. Behind the red door was a boy with a short bronze sword standing in a market and a dead snake woman at his feet. He was 11 and he did not look like it. He did not look at all like it. Ah, the hat said, there you are. Here I am, sir, a demigod. Oh, I have only seen one of those before, and that was no, never mind. The green door now. It opened the green door. Behind the green door was Luke Castellan sitting on a chopping block in a Portuguese field with his hands in his hair. The hat said, a father you love. Yes, a father who is going to get a great many people killed. Harry did not speak, including himself, the hat said gently, and he knows this, and he is doing it anyway. And he is teaching you to help him. Is he, sir? Oh, child, don't play this one with me. I am the one thing in this castle that will not be lied to. Yes, he is. Harry, after a moment, lowered his eyes, not for the watchers in the hall, for himself. Where will you put me, sir? I should put you in Slytherin, the hat said quietly. Everything upstairs in that house of yours has Slytherin tendencies, ambition, care for your own, the long plan, the patience. It is not a bad house, child. I say that to every set of ears that will listen. It is not a bad house. I know, you have Gryffindor in you too, a great deal of it. Your mother was in Gryffindor. My mother was a woman in a doorway, sir. The hat was very still. So she was, it said softly, so she was. You did not have to tell me that to move me, child. I was already moved. Where will you put me? Slytherin would teach you to hide. You do not need to learn to hide. Gryffindor would teach you to step out. You do need to learn to step out, but not yet, and not in the way Gryffindor will put in your head. Ravenclaw would teach you to think. You already think too well. Hufflepuff, sir. Would teach you to hold. The hat paused, but you would have no one to hold to yet. So, a long pause. I will put you with the serpents. Watch yourself there. Not because they are bad, I say it again, for the benefit of the eavesdroppers, that they are not bad, but because the thing behind your black door will enjoy it there. Let it enjoy it. Do not let it speak for you. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. Say it aloud now, so we end the show. The hat's voice warmed a half-inch. Gryffindor would have liked you, child, and so would Ravenclaw, and frankly Hufflepuff would have kept you warm. Remember, we offered. I will, sir. The hat lifted its inner voice into its outer voice. Slytherin, it cried, and the hall that had been held for a long breath came back to itself. Harry stood up, left the stool, handed the hat back to Professor McGonagall with a small, polite nod that was exactly the nod of an 11-year-old who had practiced in a mirror, and walked across the flagstones to the green table. Applause from Slytherin was louder than he expected, a little uncertain, as though they had not quite known whether he was theirs, and had decided, by the hat's word, to claim him. As he walked past the staff table, he glanced up, just for a second, at the silver-bearded old man in the tall throne-like chair. Albus Dumbledore met his eyes. It was like meeting a lake. Dumbledore smiled at him over his spectacles. A mild smile, an ordinary smile. A smile that did not promise him anything and did not take anything away. The smile of a man who has wanted for many years to see a particular face, and who now must not betray any of that wanting because the face is wearing the Slytherin patch. Harry returned the smile of a slightly lonely first-year who had been told this headmaster was kind. Then he turned his head and sat at the green table and did not look up again. Beside him, a pale blonde boy with a sharp chin lined over. Potter, the boy said. Malfoy, how did you know? My guardian told me what the house wards look like on your cloak clasp. You fasten it on the wrong side. Only Malfoys do that. Malfoy's face went through a small, complicated sequence. Landed on pleased. Good to meet you, Potter. Good to meet you, Malfoy. Across the table, a girl with ice-blonde hair and a very still mouth was watching the exchange with the politeness of a chess clock. Greengrass, Harry said to her. Potter, said Daphne Greengrass. Potter, said a small dark-haired boy 2 seats down hopefully. Not, Harry said, glancing at him. Yes, Theodore Nott said more hopefully. Harry allowed himself one thin smile, the kind a lonely 11-year-old might be surprised into by friendliness he had not expected, and then he looked very deliberately at the head of the table, where the ghost of a bitter-looking man in chains was hovering, and said, "Good evening, Baron." The bloody Baron, who had been about to haunt someone more traditionally, looked at him. After a moment the Baron inclined his head very slightly. "Good evening, Mr. Potter," he said in a voice like a key in an old lock, and drifted away to terrorize someone else. Malfoy, Greengrass, and not all stared at Harry. "He talks to you," Malfoy said. "I spoke first," Harry said. "I find that helps." The three of them stared a little more. Across the hall, at the high table, a greasy-haired man in a black robe who had not been looking at Harry up to that point began, against his own wishes, to look. Severus Snape watched the Potter boy through dinner and watched him through dessert, and watched him, thoughtfully and without an expression the rest of the staff could read, all the way up until the pumpkin juice was cleared and the first years were led down into the dungeons by an older prefect. Afterward, in the headmaster's office, he stood in front of Dumbledore with his hands folded in front of him and said flatly, "That is not Lily's boy." Dumbledore looked at him over his spectacles for a long moment, stroking a long white finger slowly across his chin. "It is Lily's boy, Severus. That child has not been raised by Petunia Dursley. He has not been raised by any human being I have ever seen raise a child. He knows the Malfoy cloak clasp. He greeted the Baron. He looked me in the face without—" Snape's jaw tightened. "Without anything. He was calm. He was assessing me." "Yes, then I ask it again, headmaster, who raised him?" Dumbledore sighed a very long sigh. "I do not yet know," he said, "but for the first time in 10 years, Severus, he is under this roof, and under this roof we may find out." Snape said nothing for a long moment. "Be careful of him, Albus." He is very dangerous, Albus. So were you at 11. Snape did not deign to answer that. He inclined his head a half-inch, let himself out, and went down to the dungeons to set his own house a precise list of rules for dealing with the new Potter first year, beginning with the sentence, "You will not try to bully him, not any of you, because you will lose." The school, as schools do, digested him. In the first week, Harry surprised the charms master by lighting his feather 2 seconds ahead of Hermione Granger. He surprised no one by doing his transfiguration homework perfectly the first time and refusing politely to do it twice. And he surprised Snape in Snape's own potions classroom by knowing, when asked, the difference between Wolfsbane and Monkshood, and between a Bezoar and a Bezoar-shaped bribe. And by answering in a clean, steady voice that did not ask Snape for approval and did not flinch from its lack. 5 points, Snape said silkily, to Slytherin for at least reading a book. "Thank you, sir." "Do you know, Potter, what I am capable of doing to students who read books? Teaching them, sir, I assume." Snape's mouth did a very small thing at one corner that Hermione, watching from the front row with a wounded and confused expression, thought afterward had been, possibly, almost a smile. In the second week, Harry went quietly to the library after curfew with Professor Snape's unknowing permission. He had watched, from a corner of the Great Hall, how Snape placed his feet in the corridor rounds, and he took from a shelf marked "Restricted" without triggering the book's alarm a copy of Most Potent Potions, which he read through in its entirety on the floor of the Slytherin common room by the emerald light of the lake. He did not copy anything out of it. He remembered. In the third week, at the first flying lesson on broomsticks, he rose 6 feet off the ground, tilted, felt the wind in his ears exactly the way he had felt wind in his ears on a cargo ship when he was 1, and laughed aloud for the first time in public since he had arrived. Madame Hooch looked at him with a different expression than she had looked at him before. "Mr. Potter," she said after class, "a word." "Yes, ma'am." "Where did you learn to fly?" "I haven't flown before today, ma'am." Madame Hooch looked at him. Harry looked back innocently. She said. She did not make him the Slytherin Seeker. She did the next best thing. She made him the Slytherin Seeker's shadow, a nameless, reserved position whose only official duty was to practice with the team twice a week, and she watched him in private with her hawk-colored eyes and reserved judgment. Luke, in an address in London Harry had memorized and never written down, read these developments weekly in small looping handwriting Harry had invented for the purpose, and approved of them with a single word on a single postcard each time. Good. In the 4th week, Harry found the man in the turban. He had been looking for him. He had clocked him at the feast, a pale, stuttering professor whose breath smelled of old hay and something else, something cold, and whose turban had, and Harry had been watching for this very carefully, moved once independently, in a way a wound-on piece of cloth should not move. He had clocked the smell. It was the same smell the smudge hummed in time with. It was a hum Harry had, it turned out, grown up with. It was the hum of the thing on the other side of the black door in the Hat's reckoning, which was something very small and very patient that was very much not finished. The second half of it, the larger, paler, less patient half, was behind Quirrell's turban. Harry found them both together on the 4th Thursday of term, in a corridor he was not supposed to be in, on an errand that had a legitimate excuse he had prepared. Quirrell alone was coming out of a broom cupboard. He stopped at the sight of Harry. His eyes went a little too wide and a little too fast. "Peapotter," Quirrell said. "Professor," Harry said, "why you are out past curfew?" "I am. Madame Pomfrey was going to give me a sleeping draught. I haven't been sleeping well." "I'm afraid I got turned around." Quirrell's mouth quivered. Under his turban, something else quivered. Harry watched the quivering and kept his face perfectly steady. I will show you the way to the hospital wing, Peapotter." "Thank you, sir." They walked in silence for perhaps 20 yards, then between two torches where the corridor was dark and there were no portraits, Harry said quietly, "I know." Quirrell's steps faltered for one fraction of a second. No W at Peapotter. "Who you are riding," Harry said. Quirrell stopped. The thing behind his turban stopped with him. Harry felt it stop. He felt it turn. He felt it look at him in the way a cobra looks at a mongoose, which is to say with a long, slow, calculating malice. "Child," a voice said in the back of his skull, "you will have 10 seconds to explain yourself and not die." The voice was very, very, very close to the smudge in Harry's forehead. Almost not quite the same voice. Harry heard the not quite. Harry was the only person in the castle who would ever hear the not quite. 10 seconds is a lot," Harry said aloud calmly. "I will use 3. Hear me, sir. You want the stone. The stone is guarded by a dog, a plant, a broom, a chessboard, a potion, and a mirror. I have been here 1 month and I know all 6. You have been here 2 years and you do not know the mirror." "I do." Silence. 1 second has passed. "I will trade you the mirror," Harry said, "for 2 things, a piece of information and a promise." 2 seconds. "The information is this. The mirror will not give you the stone. The mirror gives the stone only to someone who wants the stone and does not want to use it. That is the door. Reassure yourself I am right. You can't hurt me worse by reassuring yourself." A pause. "You know this how?" "The headmaster wrote the spell. The spell is in the writing he left in the books I read at night. I can tell you the verb he used if you like, and we can stop pretending I made this up." Another pause, a longer one, and the promise. "That when you have the stone and when you are bodied again, you do not come for me. Not this year, not next year, not on a Thursday evening when I am tired. You come for me when I send for you and not before. I want us to meet another way. You are offering your parents killer terms. I am offering an enemy terms," Harry said evenly. "You killed a man who is not here and a woman who is not here. I was one. I do not remember them. I have been raised by someone else. I am not a potter. I am a potter's shell with someone else's things in it. I will come for you about them in time. This is not that time. This is a transaction." A very long pause. "You are," Voldemort's voice said slowly, "your mother's son in the places I did not expect. I do not expect you to explain that. I will not. I accept your terms. The mirror. The mirror needs the want without the wanting. You will not do it yourself. You will put the stone in a pocket at the right moment through a boy who will think he is helping. There is a boy on the grounds who wants the stone and cannot have it. His wanting is pure. Use him. Name him. I will not." A soft, cold laugh. "Good boy, I will find him. We are agreed, Mr. Potter. I will not come for you for a year. You will provide me the mirror's mechanism in writing by next Thursday. Tuesday. Tuesday, good." Professor Quirrell took Harry to the hospital wing. He said nothing more. His mouth shook. His turban sat now perfectly still. Harry took his sleeping draught from Madame Pomfrey, went back to the Slytherin dungeons, lay in his 4-poster, and stared at the canopy for a very long time. Then in a small, loose voice that did not sound like his at all, he said, "You heard me." The smudge in his forehead did not answer, but he could feel very faintly the smudge being pleased and a little amused and a little impressed. He did not care about the pleasure. He cared about the amusement. Amusement, he had learned from Luke, was what a dangerous thing gave you when it had decided you were interesting enough not to eat yet. He would not be eaten. He told Luke everything on paper, on a postcard, in invented handwriting on a Tuesday. Luke wrote back on Friday from an address that had changed again. "Good boy, you are ahead of us. The stone is bigger than the old man realizes. If it falls into the turban, it falls into a house I have a key to. Your father will approve when I tell him. Do not give the mirror's mechanism to anyone before the stone is lifted. If the old man's plot needs the stone to move to trigger, we need it to move." Luke, on the night of Halloween, Harry sat at the green table and ate very little, because the wizarding world celebrated the wrong anniversary, and it was his real one. At 11 o'clock, when the other first-years were already asleep and the mountain troll was, Harry knew, being let in down by the dungeons by a professor in a turban, he did not, as he might have in another life, go looking for Hermione Granger. Hermione was safe where she was. He had checked. He had left her a note anonymously 2 days earlier warning her not to go into the bathroom, and she had folded it in half very carefully and put it in a book, because Hermione, he had noticed, folded things carefully. He did instead go looking for Firenze. He did it because the hat had told him to pay attention to what lived in the Forbidden Forest. He did it because Ilwan, who had read him everything available on wizard-adjacent magical species, had been very specific that Centaur saw coming things no one else saw. He did it because tonight, specifically, the sky over the forbidden forest was bright with a conjunction of Mars and Jupiter, and Alwan had said, when that happens, moan petty, the centaurs say things they do not usually say. He slipped out past the troll-distracted guard, through the back of the Slytherin common room where he had by now established his own private exit through a loose flagstone and a crawlspace, and across the lawn and into the trees. He found Firenze an hour in at a clearing where 4 deer paths crossed. Firenze was alone. He was looking up at the sky. His forelegs were trembling very slightly, the way the legs of a good horse trembled when it was looking at a bad horizon. Centaur, Harry said from the tree line. Firenze did not turn. Child, I am told you see coming things. I am told you are one. Harry came into the clearing. He stopped at a polite distance. He looked up at the sky, which told him nothing. He was not a centaur. What are you looking at? He said. Mars, Firenze said softly, is very bright tonight. Jupiter sits on his shoulder. This has not happened in this quadrant in 12 years. When did it last happen? The night before you were born. Harry said nothing. Firenze finally turned his great, solemn, starlit face and looked down at him. You are 2 stars colliding, child, Firenze said. Pray one of them is yours. Harry felt the smudge in his forehead go still as a held breath. He felt the demigod sharpness in him quiet itself. He felt underneath those, the plain small part of him that was just a boy, looking up at a centaur in the dark, go warm. I am making it mine, he said very quietly. Whichever one it is, I am making it mine. Firenze considered him for a long moment. You may succeed, he said, with no comfort in it and no cruelty either. I have not seen another child in a very long time who might. I wish you a name of your own, boy, not the one you were born to, not the one you are called, your own. Harry said, thank you. The centaur inclined his great head and turned back to the sky. Harry walked back across the lawn through the wet grass, slipping back through his loose flagstone exit, brushing the mud off his shoes, climbing into his 4-poster before the prefects turned around on their Halloween watch. He lay in the dark. He did not think about Firenze. He thought, unexpectedly, about Benoit the Satyr, about the specific way Benoit's hands had shaken in the field in Portugal, about the specific way he, Harry, had spoken to Benoit, calm, clean, adult, about how he had saved that life. How Luke had let him save that life, even though Luke's policy was not to let Watchers live. There was something in him, he realized, that had saved Benoit because it could not save Benoit. The same something had folded up Hermione's warning note. The same something had spoken to Firenze. The same something had, he now thought, refused just now in the corridor with Quirrell to blink. That something was not Luke's teaching. He did not in that moment name it. He only noticed that it was there. And he thought in a way he did not write to Luke about, in a way he did not write to anyone about, in a way he only held very privately, at the back of his own eyes, he thought, I have not decided yet what to do with this. This is mine. This I get to decide about. Somewhere outside the Slytherin dungeons, beyond the castle and beyond the lake, beyond the mountains and beyond the sea, in a cabin on a hill in Long Island Sound, a tall blonde girl of 15 was sitting by the window of the big house looking at a map. The map was a map of Europe, and it had a great many small pins in it, red pins, which were places Luke had said he was, and blue pins, which were places Luke had actually been seen by anyone she trusted. The 2 sets did not match. Beside her, chewing blue candy and saying nothing, was a boy of 12 in a bright orange t-shirt, wiry, sea-tanned, freckled, with a shock of black hair that he had not combed in possibly a week. Percy, she said, without looking at him. Yes. Do you know what we are looking at? A lot of pins is what I'm looking at, he said. Do you know who I'm looking for? You're your friend who's gone, my friend who's gone. Yeah, I think he took a baby. Percy Jackson looked at her for a long time. When, 11 years ago, when you were what, 4, Jesus, Annabeth, Chiron thinks it too. Do we go get the baby? The baby is now 11. Oh, he's at a school in the north. Chiron is sending us in. Why us? Because we're 11 and 12 and the school takes 11 and 12. Because you're unclaimed and no gods are watching you yet, which means Luke won't smell you coming, because I have eyes. Percy scratched the back of his neck. I don't think I'm any good at 11 and 12. You don't have to be good at it. You have to be what you are, a 7th grader who is bad at school. That I can do, good. She did not smile. She did not move her eyes off the map. We leave in the spring. Annabeth, if we find him, Luke, if we find him and he won't come home, what do we do? Annabeth finally turned her head and looked at Percy, and her eyes were not a 15-year-old's eyes. We bring home what we can, she said, and we leave what we can't. Percy chewed his candy. Okay, he said after a while, okay. On a night sky over a forest thousands of miles east, Mars sat very bright and Jupiter sat on his shoulder, and the smudge on a boy's forehead hummed a small satisfied hum and decided, patiently, to wait. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5: The Forge and the Flood. The stone left the castle on a Wednesday. It did not leave the way Voldemort or Dumbledore thought it would leave. It did not leave through the mirror, although the mirror had ultimately been opened for it. It did not leave in the turban of a stuttering professor, although the professor had ultimately died for it. It left, as Harry had planned from the fourth Thursday of term, in the pocket of a Hufflepuff second year called Cedric Diggory. Cedric was the boy Harry had not named to Voldemort. Harry had chosen him very carefully over the course of 5 weeks, from a small list of pure-hearted children in the castle who had a plausible reason to wander near the third-floor corridor. Cedric was kind, athletic, curious, and crucially, dying to impress his father. His father had been hearing all year about a Hufflepuff hero in his own school year who was beating records in broom flight, and Cedric had internalized the wanting and not getting of a boy who always came third. When Cedric, under the mild influence of a potion Harry had brewed from a page of most potent potions, and slipped into the Hufflepuff common room via a first-year cousin of his, wandered into the forbidden corridor on a Wednesday night and stood before the mirror of Arist, the mirror showed him holding the stone. The stone dropped, as it had been engineered to drop, into Cedric's pocket. Cedric walked out. Cedric had no memory of the corridor when he woke in his bed the next morning, only a strange, warm, proud feeling of having done a good thing. In his trunk, among his folded shirts, a small red stone sat. 43 minutes later, Cedric's trunk was opened, its shirts neatly refolded, and the red stone removed by a young man wearing a Slytherin second year's robes who was not in fact a Slytherin second year. The young man left via the window. The young man was Luke. He had walked into the castle at dusk looking like a tutor hired by the Malfoys, with a forged commission from the Board of Governors tucked in a leather folder, using the father smile and the easy walk and the Hermes talent for being exactly the person that the doorman expected. He had left the castle at midnight looking like a gardener with a barrow full of clipped box. Neither of his 2 disguises was present in the castle's ghost census. He walked down to the edge of the lake, shed the barrow, shed the gardener, put on an old coat, swung a leg over a motorbike he had parked 3 miles into the woods, and he was in Hogsmeade before Filch noticed an unfamiliar boot print in the greenhouse. By the time Dumbledore, alerted to an unusual movement of ward magic, stood in the vacated chamber of the mirror looking thoughtfully at the absence where a stone had been, Luke was over the border into Muggle Yorkshire. By the time Dumbledore stood at the foot of Harry's 4-poster very quietly and put a long finger against the boy's cheek to feel the temperature of his dreaming, Luke was halfway down in a road in the dark. Dumbledore looked for a long moment at the sleeping boy. "Oh, my friend," he said softly to the portrait of a Slytherin 5th-century monk who had fallen discreetly asleep on the wall. "What has been done to this child? What has been done?" The portrait snored politely. Dumbledore withdrew. The boy in the 4-poster did not stir. The boy in the 4-poster had been taught, for 10 years, to keep his breathing even when adults were looking at him in the dark. The stone was in Luke's pocket, and Luke was loose, and the next morning Harry, innocent-faced in the Great Hall eating toast, accepting a brief polite well done from Malfoy on a transfiguration score and a sharper very good from Snape on a potions essay, felt the humming in his forehead take on an entirely new pitch. It was triumphant. He tapped it gently under the table. "Not yet," he murmured inside himself. "We are not done." The smudge subsided. Across the sea, a stone in a pocket was one of many unfolding things. In a small apartment in Manhattan on the same morning, a woman named Sally Jackson was making pancakes for a boy in an orange t-shirt and a girl with a blonde braid. Annabeth had turned 16 3 weeks earlier. Percy was, against all expectations, still 12. The boy had been unclaimed for all 12 of those years, and his mother was holding across the kitchen table an envelope she had been hiding under the sugar tin and had finally pushed toward him. "It's a letter," Percy said slowly. "I know it's a letter. From the camp, from the camp. Do I open it?" "That is typically what one does with a letter," Annabeth said from the stove, flipping a pancake one-handed. "But if you would rather I do it for you, I will charge 5 drachmas. I'll open it." He opened it. He read it. He paled. "I'm going to Britain," he said. "That is what the letter says, yes, to a wizard school, among other things, to look at a kid. That is the stated purpose. With you and Grover. Grover is going to hate this." Sally sipped her coffee and did not smile, but she looked at Annabeth the way mothers look at girls who are far too young to be about to do what they are about to do. "You're going to be careful," Sally said. It was not a question. "Yes, ma'am, both of you." "Yes, ma'am," said Percy automatically, even though the instruction had barely been for him. "I have one condition," Sally said. "Yes, ma'am, the boy you are going to look at, if he is a boy. If he has been a boy through all of this, which you know is not given Annabeth." Yes, ma'am. If he is a boy and he does not know who his real parents are and he asks you, you tell him the truth. I know we are not told to, but you tell him. Children who do not know the names of their mothers grow up into adults who are owed something by the world. Annabeth at the stove did not answer for a moment, then she nodded. Yes, ma'am, she said very quietly. Sally squeezed her hand. Percy ate his pancakes. 2 weeks later, at the Gringotts service counter on a Thursday afternoon, a goblin with a long ring-scarred nose watched a boy in black Hogwarts robes approach his desk with a polite expression that could have been, on first reading, the face of a lost tourist, and which on second reading was not that face at all. Sir, said Harry, bowing the small, neat bow Alwan had taught him was correct for Grot Boulevard. The goblin, flattered in the way goblins were always flattered by correct bows, inclined his head. Name, young master, Potter. The goblin's face did not change, although his hand on his stamp paused. And you seek my vault. Very good. You are new to us, young master. We will require proof. I have it here. Harry laid on the counter a small iron ring, a lock of dark red hair, and a slip of paper on which someone had written, very carefully in James Potter's handwriting, which had been copied on the long drive up from London by a man in a muggle cap, off a 12-year-old page in a 7th-year herbology textbook Luke had purchased from the second-hand stall in Diagon Alley 3 weekends earlier. I leave this lock to my son, the house to my son, the sky to my son, James Potter. 31 December 1980. The goblin looked at the objects. He looked at the boy. The boy, very politely, did nothing. It is unusual, the goblin said, for a child to come unaccompanied. My guardian is French, Harry said. Your wards are not friendly to him. Ah, I will not waste your time. I have memorized my vault number. I have the key in my sock. The key in your sock, young master. I am told, Harry said, polite as a porcelain saucer, that the robes have no pockets. I adapted. The goblin regarded him for perhaps 10 seconds. Then, because even goblins, who did not often laugh, had a fondness for precise small people, he gave the faintest twitch of an almost smile, stamped a slip, and called for a cart. The vault he led Harry to was not Harry's. It was 3 floors below his. It was a vault with no number on the door. Harry had come to Gringotts under his own name for the mundane vault and with a separate key, sewn into the other sock, for a vault registered to a company that did not exist, which had been opened in 1980 by a man in a cloak, and funded by a one-time anonymous deposit of a great deal of galleons, which had been Luke Castellan's single most expensive achievement of the last 5 years. Harry stepped inside. In the dim torchlight, a low stone pedestal held a single object, a small copper pendant, much like the one he had taken off the Dracaena in Marseille, only older. It pulsed once to acknowledge him. In the back of the vault, on a higher pedestal, rested a second object, a pale stone disc the size of his palm, graven with symbols in a script no wizard would recognize. The disc was Hecate S. It had gone missing from her temple 2,000 years ago. A son of Hermes had stolen it back then and lost it at dice. It had drifted through vaults and wars and private collections, until a certain anonymous depositor in Diagon Alley had traced its paper trail very carefully, bid on it at a very discreet auction, and buried it here. Harry took the disc. He took the pendant. He put both in the lead-lined inner pocket Alwan had sewn into the lining of his robes. He thanked the goblin. He left. On the stairs outside Gringotts he stopped. Across the alley, leaning against a doorway, a man was watching him. The man was tall, gaunt, and ragged, with hair in need of cutting and eyes in need of sleep. He was wearing, Harry noted with an almost distant interest, a coat that did not belong to him and shoes that did not match his coat. He looked at first like a derelict who had wandered too far up Diagon Alley. He looked at second reading like a derelict doing a very good imitation of not having seen Harry at all. A third reading made Harry's breath catch. He knew that face. He did not know how he knew that face. He had not seen it on a postcard, in a book, in a portrait. But his body knew that face. Some part of him, the baby part, the oldest part, the part that had still belonged to other people when it had learned its first faces, knew that man. The man looked up and met Harry's eyes, and for a single clean moment the alley around them went very quiet. Then the man pushed off the doorway and walked, fast, away up Diagon Alley. Harry stood on the steps of Gringotts for 3 full seconds, then he went after him. He did not run, he never ran. He walked very quickly, using the bodies of the Thursday crowd as cover the way Luke had taught him, and he did not lose the man. The man knew he was followed and did not care. The man led him without hurry down a side alley, around a corner, up a rickety iron staircase to the rooftops, and across 3 roofs in the thin gray rain that had started while they were walking. On the 4th roof the man stopped. Harry stopped at a polite distance. The man turned. His face in the rain was a 40-year-old face that had been lost in a hole for 10 of those years. His eyes were wolfish and too clear, and Harry saw now very kind. Harry, he said, his voice cracked on the name. Harry did not speak for a long moment. Who are you? He said at last, and he kept his hand open at his side, loose near the wand. Sirius, the man said, Sirius Black, you won't remember. I was going to be your second father. You're your godfather. I held you. I held you the first time the day after you were born, and his voice broke again. He made a sound that was half a laugh, half a cough. Christ, Harry, look at you. You look like him. God, you look like him. You have Lily's eyes. So I am told. By whom? By the man who raised me. Sirius went very still. Who raised you? He said in a voice that was no longer cracking. Harry watched him. Listen to me, Harry. Sirius took one slow step forward. He held both his hands open at his sides, palms out. I don't know what they told you. I don't know what you know. I know this. Your mother and father loved you. They loved you. They were so proud of you. It was embarrassing. You were a pudge, Harry. You were a bald, furious pudge, and they cooed over you, and they died because someone we trusted betrayed them. And then I was put in Azkaban for the betrayal, for 12 years, because nobody listened to me. I got out 3 months ago because I finally understood who had actually done it, and I came to kill him, and on the way I looked for you, and I have been looking for you for 3 months. And I did not believe it until today, because when your name went into the Gringotts register yesterday, he stopped. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. Rain was making it hard to tell which water was which. I did not believe it, he said again, quieter. I did not believe you were alive. I thought that night in Godric's Hollow, whoever took you out of the crib had taken you to, he swallowed. I thought you had been eaten alive by the old gods or by Voldemort's lot, by someone, by something. For 10 years I have. Harry's hand, he realized, had gone to his forehead. He did not remember putting it there. Listen, Sirius said, Harry. Listen, your father was James Potter. He was a terrible driver and a good Quidditch player and a loud laugher, and he put me through school. He would have loved you so much. Your mother was Lily Potter, who was born Lily Evans, and she was the best wizard I ever knew, Harry. The best, kinder than Dumbledore, sharper than Voldemort, better at both and prouder than both, and he stopped. I'm not doing this well, he said. I'm sorry, I'm not doing this well. Come here. I cannot come, Harry said. Sirius stopped. Why? Because if I come to you, I betray the man who raised me. I am not ready to do that yet. Sirius stared at him. Who raised you, Harry? Someone who loves me, Harry said slowly, deliberately. Who loves me, who loved me first, and who has lied to me about certain things but not this one. Sirius's face under the rain did a small, terrible thing. Harry, he said, Harry, I believe you about the love. I believe you. I will not fight the love, but I will ask you one question and I will accept whatever answer you give. Tell me the name of the man who raised you. Harry opened his mouth. Enough. The voice came from the edge of the roof behind Harry. Sirius's eyes snapped to it. Harry did not turn. He knew who it was. Luke, Harry said steadily without moving. Hadrian, Luke said, and came to stand at Harry's shoulder. Step back, Luke. Number, step back, Luke. Hadrian, Luke said softer. Step back. Harry stepped back. Sirius Black saw him for the first time. 12 years ago on a cold boat in the Atlantic, a 14-year-old boy had told a god to go back to his cloud. That same boy was standing on a roof in London 10 years older, taller, with the same scar down his forearm and a different scar down his jaw, and his wand was already drawn, and Sirius Black, who had a very good eye for the faces of fugitives, knew him the way one fugitive knows another. You, Sirius said softly. Me, Luke said. You took him. I did. Godric's Hollow. That's right. Why? Because he was going to die there, Luke said, and nobody was coming. I was coming. You, Luke said, were an hour late. Sirius made a small hurt noise. Don't you think, Luke said, quieter now with a dangerous evenness. I haven't thought about that, Sirius Black. Don't you think I haven't? I was 14, I was tired, I stepped into the wrong hollow on the wrong night, and the one man who was going to come get him was riding a motorbike behind me with a stop at a publican's for a pint of ale. You are not his father, you were going to be, you were, I was, step back. Sirius's wand came up, Luke's sword came out. Stop, both men looked at Harry. He had not raised his voice. He had stepped forward between them without either man seeing him move. Stop, Harry said again, more quietly. Both of you. Stop, Luke's jaw did the thing. Sirius's wand wavered. Harry looked at Sirius. He let his face, for the first time on this rooftop, be 11 years old. I am not coming with you today, he said. I want you to know that I heard you. I want you to know I believe you. I want to meet you again. I want you to tell me everything you just said in more detail and with more pictures when we have time. I want to hear about my mother's voice and my father's hair and what your house looked like. I want all of it. I do not want it today because today I am with him. Harry, I am with him, Harry said. I am going to keep being with him for a while yet. I need you alive for when I am not. Do you understand? Sirius stared at him. How old are you? Sirius said. 11. That is not an 11-year-old's answer. I know. Sirius closed his eyes for a moment. All right, he said. All right, yes, you, yes, I will go, I will live, I will find a way to write to you. I will, God, Harry, go. Sirius went. He went the quick silent way down the far side of the roof and over a chimney stack, and he was gone. Harry turned to Luke. Luke was looking at him in a way that made the air go bad. Hadrian, yes, you spared him. I did. I could have killed him. I should have killed him. He is the one man in this world now who knows our face. Seen mine for the first time. He has seen yours for the second. The first time was in a crib. I know, and you spared him. I did. Twice in 1 year, Hadrian. I know. Luke's voice, when it came next, was very quiet. You have a hinge in you, he said. Yes, I said they would find the hinge. Yes, I am looking at the hinge. Yes, they stood in the rain. I am going to talk to you about the hinge, Luke said at last. When we are back inside, I am not going to shout. I am not going to punish you. I am going to explain to you again exactly what it is going to cost all of us. And you are going to listen, and you are going to take the knife I give you next time, and you are going to use it, and we will not have this conversation again. Do you understand? Yes, say it like you mean it. Don't lie to me, Hadrian. Harry in the rain closed his mouth. Luke watched him. Luke's mouth did something that was not anger. It was worse, a kind of grieving. All right, Luke said softly. All right, come home. They went home. Home that week was a flat above a Muggle optician's in a borough Harry could not find on a map. Ilwan was there. Ilwan said nothing to Harry's face about the rain or the roof or the Godfather. Ilwan fed them both soup. He went to bed. Harry went to bed too. He lay in the dark and he did not sleep. Below his window the city hummed. Above him the smudge hummed. He felt both hums separately, and he thought of Sirius Black's face in the rain, and he thought of Luke's mouth doing the grieving thing, and he thought of Cedric Diggory waking up without the stone and feeling strange briefly and then forgetting, and he thought of the Dracaena in Marseille and Benoit the Satyr in Firenze under the Mars and Jupiter sky. He thought, I have been lied to. He thought, not about everything, about one thing at the center. Luke kept my parents from being the people who were coming. He did not let them come. He said they were not coming. Sirius was coming. He thought, I need to know who else is coming. He slept near dawn. 4 days later he went back to Hogwarts on the train with an unobtrusive lead-lined pocket in his robes and a new tightness in his chest. At Hogwarts 2 things had changed. The first change, the stone was known to be missing. Dumbledore had told no one except Snape and McGonagall, and not the board and not the ministry. The castle did not know. Harry knew because the portraits knew. The portraits did not keep secrets well, and he had befriended 3 of them by now. He absorbed the panic at second hand and was very careful in his manner to show no sign of having it. The second change, in the entrance hall on the Monday morning of his return, 2 new students were being introduced. A tall girl with blonde hair pulled back in a braid. A wiry boy with sea-colored eyes and hair that looked like he had cut it himself. Quiet, please, Professor McGonagall was saying. Students, quiet. We have 2 exchange visitors this term. They are from an American magical institute. They will observe certain classes. Please welcome Miss Annabeth Chase and Mr. Perseus Jackson. Percy lifted a hand and grinned awkwardly. Annabeth's gray eyes swept the hall. They landed on Harry. They locked. Harry met her gaze very briefly over the porridge. He gave her the small 11-year-old polite smile a Slytherin boy gives anyone he does not know. She gave him a very cool, very measuring nod back. Percy beside her looked quickly at her face and then at Harry's and then at her face again, and Harry, who was getting very good at reading faces, thought, ah, she has told him I am the one. In the afternoon, during a break between classes, he found her alone in the library, pretending to read a book about Quidditch that she had not turned the page on in 4 minutes. He sat down across from her. Annabeth, he said. Hadrian, she said. Harry did not flinch. I prefer Harry at school, do you? For most purposes, you are 11. I am. He made you 11 at 11. Good. I'm not his ornament. I didn't say you were. A beat. Why are you here? Harry said. To look at you. And to decide what, whether you are a boy still or a weapon. Harry looked at her over the table. She looked back. She had, he thought, gray eyes that were frightening in a very specific way. He had been trained on those eyes. He had looked into them in a photograph Luke kept in his wallet. I am both, Harry said quietly. I am not telling you that to make you pity me. I am telling you because you are smarter than that. I am a boy. I am also a weapon. Those are both real. The weapon part he made. What part is mine? If you are here to decide both. Annabeth was quiet for a long moment. All right, she said finally. All right, I want to say something I did not expect to want to say. Yes, I am sorry for that he did this to you, not the weapon, the boy. I am sorry that a 14-year-old took a 1-year-old because he was broken and made the 1-year-old into what he needed. I don't hate him for it. I hate what it did to you. Do you understand the difference? Harry held very still. He did not answer at once. When he did, his voice was very dry and small, and he did not like the smallness, and he kept going anyway. I do understand the difference, he said. Thank you. Yes. What do you want me to do? Harry said after a beat. Nothing yet, Annabeth said. Read a letter I am going to write you. Think about what it says. Meet me again in 2 weeks. All right. She closed the Quidditch book. She stood up. Harry, yes, we will come for him before the solstice, whether you are with us or against us. I wanted you to know. Understood. She left. Percy at the door, who had been half reading a comic book and half watching Harry over its top edge, nodded at him with the exaggerated politeness of a boy who very much did not want trouble, and followed her out. Harry sat for a long time at the library table and did not open a book. Before the solstice, he thought. The smudge in his forehead hummed a pleased hum. Voldemort's fragment, he realized with a kind of cold, clean interest, had approved of the conversation. It had found Annabeth threatening. It had found her threatening and interesting, and it wanted Harry to remember carefully the exact color of her eyes. Not today, Harry told the smudge, not for you. Hush. The smudge, slightly reluctantly, hushed. He went on. The Chamber of Secrets opened on a Friday in late May. It did not open because Tom Riddle's diary had possessed a Weasley girl in her first year, because Harry, who was very systematic about these things, had taken the diary himself during a detour through Borgin and Berks 3 weekends earlier, bribed by a packet of chocolate and a pointed question to a pale boy named Draco, who it turned out had found it in his father's study, and in a fit of 12-year-old contrariness was willing to trade. Harry had opened the diary alone in his four-poster at 3 in the morning. He had written in it very carefully, "Hello, Tom," and Tom, after a moment, had replied, "Hello." And Harry had spent a very long, very quiet hour asking Tom, one question at a time, everything he knew about Parseltongue and basilisks and the chamber and the phoenix and the headmaster and the diary itself, and Tom had answered under the mild compulsion of a bored, vain ghost's need to tell his cleverness to a listener. Harry had learned what he needed. Then he had at the end asked Tom, "Where is the 7th?" Tom, for the first time, had paused. 7th, what he had written. Piece Harry had written. There had been a very long stillness on the page. Then Tom had written, "How do you know?" "I am the 7th," Harry had written. The page had gone black, then white, then black again. The diary had become very warm in Harry's hand. Tom had written very slowly, "You are not lying." "Number child," Tom had written, and the voice through the page had changed, had become, suddenly, the voice Harry knew in his own head, the bigger brother of the smudge. "Child, you have been raised somewhere very strange, haven't you?" "Yes," Harry had written, "and you are not telling me what I want to hear. I am asking you what I want to know. Who taught you to do this?" "A son of Hermes." Another stillness. "Ah," the diary had written, finally, softly. "The Greek. Yes, I felt him across the wards last month. Interesting, 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 interesting. Tell me, child, do you belong to him or to me?" Neither. Harry had written, "To neither of you, to myself." The diary had been silent for a very long time. Then it had written, with a kind of grudging curiosity, "You will have to prove that. I am about to." Harry had written. And then, very carefully, using the compulsion Tom had just taught him through the page, he had opened the Chamber of Secrets. He went down with a bronze short sword at his hip and a wand up his sleeve and a small mirror in his palm. He met the basilisk with the mirror's glance bouncing off its eyes, and it wasted a long time trying to see him through the reflection. When it finally struck, he was not where it thought. He was behind its head. The Ziphos went in at the base of its skull. Through a scale he had spent an hour under the table with the diary learning the exact location of, and came out with an appalling amount of venom on the other side. He rolled off the collapsing serpent's head, cut his arm on a fang, and staggered backward into Tom Riddle's ghostly form, which had rushed to meet him on the chamber's flagstones. The ghost was nearly whole. The basilisk's death had given it the last of what it needed to cohere. Tom looked at him, hungry, young, 16-year-old, handsome, with eyes like wet coals. "Give me the venom," Tom said. "No," Harry said. "Child. You have 30 seconds before that scratch on your arm kills you. You cannot cast on yourself for this venom. You cannot walk out of this chamber. You die here. Unless I brought a tear," Harry said. He opened his other hand. On his palm, in a tiny crystal vial, a single amber tear shivered. Tom's face, beautiful, 16, hungry, went very still. "Fawkes," he whispered. "I asked him a week ago," Harry said. "Politely, he likes politeness. He cried into this for me. I've been saving it." He uncorked the vial. He poured it on the cut. The pain stopped like someone had turned off a tap. He looked at Tom. "Now we talk," Harry said. Tom, his coal eyes glittering, laughed, a short, genuine, surprised laugh, and sat down cross-legged on the flagstones, insubstantial, like a ghost at a picnic. "All right," he said. "Talk, child." They talked. By the time Harry came up out of the chamber, dragging the diary behind him, he had one additional item in his possession and one crucial additional datum in his head. The item, the basilisk's fang, broken from its upper jaw, still dripping venom, which would kill any Horcrux it touched. The datum, the names, 7 of them, of the objects into which Voldemort had split, or would split, his soul. One was the diary in Harry's left hand, which Harry was choosing, for the moment, not to pierce. One was a scar on the boy's own forehead. 5 were still scattered across the wizarding world, in places Tom and his diary-bound ghost 16-year-old Fury had written out in his looping hand on a sheet of parchment Harry had provided exactly for the purpose. Harry closed the chamber behind him. He folded the parchment. He tucked it inside the lead-lined pocket. He did not destroy the diary. He took it. He wanted it. It was a piece of something he was going to finish on his own terms. At the top of the stairs out of Myrtle's bathroom, he found himself facing a tableau. Annabeth Chase on the left-hand stair, wand drawn. Percy Jackson beside her holding his own bronze sword low. Behind them at the corridor's end, coming fast, Sirius Black with something flying low overhead that looked like a hippogriff. Behind all of them, coming faster still, Luke in a servant's robe, sword drawn. None of them looked at each other. All of them looked at Harry. He stood on the stair in his blood-spattered robes with the basilisk fang in his belt, and he looked for the first time at all 4 of them at once, Godfather, demigod sister Nemesis, ocean-eyed brother foil, stolen father, and he thought, choose. The smudge in his forehead hummed, interested. Outside the windows, the sky had gone the color of Mars on a clear night. Harry let out a breath. Give me 2 minutes, he said. Chapter 5 and Chapter 6, the thrones and the scar. The 2 minutes Harry asked for on the stair he used. He did not use them to choose. He used them to tell the truth. He told Luke out loud in front of all of them everything he had done that year. Cedric Diggory and the stone, the bargain with Voldemort, the trip to Gringotts. The Hecate disc already in Luke's pocket since Thursday, the diary in his left hand, the fang in his right, the list of 5 Horcruxes in his robe, the smudge in his forehead and the humming and the 7th name on the list, which was himself. He told Annabeth and Percy the same things in the same voice without softening. He told Sirius last what he had been working toward all year, which was not any one side's victory, but the possession of a set of tools no one of the sides had seen assembled in one person before. When he was done, the landing was very quiet. Harry, Sirius said at last, in a voice that was mostly grief. Yes. I would have helped you carry some of that. I know, Harry said. I was not ready. Hadrian, Luke said very quietly. Yes, you have been lying to me for 8 months. I have been preparing an answer to a question you have been asking me for 11 years, Harry said without looking at him. You taught me to gather everything before I commit. I gathered. I am committing now. I am telling you so you hear it from my mouth. Luke closed his eyes for one long second and opened them. All right, he said. Tell me, what are you committing to? Harry looked up at him. Harry looked at Annabeth. Harry looked at Percy. Harry looked at Sirius, who had sagged against the stair rail, who had not drawn his wand again. I am committing, he said slowly, to not being any of the things any of you have made. I am not Luke Castellan's successor. I am not James Potter's posthumous son. I am not Kronos' door. I am not Voldemort's 7th. I am not the gods' reclaimed prince. I am something in the middle, and I am going to decide what to do with the middle. I am telling you all before I decide, because every one of you is a person who loves me or needs to use me, and I owe you that much. When will you decide? Annabeth said. At the solstice. That is in 12 days. Yes. Good, Annabeth said quietly, because that is when this ends, Hadrian, one way or another. Harry looked at her. He knew now what she knew. She had known, since before she came, that the Titan War's pivot was the summer solstice. She had come to Hogwarts not to assess him, but to hand him the clock. Good, he said back. Luke looked at his son for a very long moment. His face did a complicated set of things. The scar on his jaw went white, stayed white, and did not come back. You will come with me tonight, he said at last softly. Not to the camp, not to anyone, to me. There is something I have to show you before you decide. It is the one thing I have not shown you yet. After you have seen it, you decide. If you decide against me, Hadrian, I let you go. I promise you that. I let you walk out to her. He tipped his chin at Annabeth. To him. The chin moved towards Sirius. To whoever you go. That is my promise. I believe you, Harry said. You should not believe me. It is going to cost me everything. I believe you anyway. Luke's face for one brief second broke. Harry saw it. Nobody else saw it. He put it away and was a man again. Come, he said. He came. 12 days can pass quickly when people have been sharpening themselves for months. Sirius vanished into the wet countryside, and Harry wrote him one long letter on a Tuesday at an address Sirius had sewn into Harry's sleeve on the roof. Annabeth Chase left Hogwarts on a Wednesday with Percy Jackson beside her and a book borrowed from the Hogwarts library. She intended to return at the solstice personally. Dumbledore watched his Slytherin first year disappear from the castle on a Thursday evening without signing a leave slip, and did not send orders. Instead, he went alone to the top of the astronomy tower and stood a long time looking at the English sky turning toward midsummer, and he did not know what he would do if it came to it, and he did not pretend that he knew. Severus Snape knocked on the door of his office on the 10th evening and said without preamble, "He has gone to him, Albus." Yes. That boy is going to stand at the side of the son of Hermes. Possibly, Possibly, Dumbledore said, stirring a cup of tea that did not need to be stirred. He has not decided, Severus. I have felt the not deciding. It is the reason I am not yet on a broomstick. He is 11. Yes, he is 11, and he is going to stand at a solstice that has eaten older men whole. Yes, Snape stood in the office and looked down at his own hands for a long moment. Then he looked up. If he stands, he said, and stopped and started again. If he stands the right way, what will you do? I will offer him the only thing I have been able to offer him since I lost him 10 years ago, Severus, Dumbledore said. A school, a place, time, nothing more, not a prophecy, not a quest, not a wand, nothing he can hold against me when he is older. And if he stands the wrong way, then I will go on to Olympus, and I will try to keep him alive, and I will fail. Albus, I know, old friend, I know. They sat with their tea for a long time and did not say anything else about it that night. On the Mediterranean coast, in a quiet, half-ruined temple that had once been Demeter's and was now mostly Hera's because Hera had laid a claim on the disrepair, Luke Castellan stood on the flagstones with his ward beside him and looked down at an altar stone that was very old and still warm. The warmth came from below. Put your hand on it, Luke said. Harry put his hand on the altar stone. He felt immediately the hum, but louder and not the smudge's hum, a deeper one, a fundamental under the smudge, something he had been feeling all his life through 1,000 feet of rock and now was feeling through 1 inch. That is him, Luke said. I know. He has been listening to us for some years. I know. He wants me to tell you that he is not angry with you for being slow. He wants me to tell you that he admires you. Tell him thank you. Hadrian, yes. Luke looked very tired. I am going to be honest with you tonight in a way I have not been honest with you before, he said. I am going to use the word I. I am going to stop pretending that this is about vengeance for abstract injustices. It is also about me. I want you to hear me out without interrupting. All right, I am going to lose, Luke said. Harry, for the first time in the whole 2 years of feeling the smudge hum, went completely still. I am going to lose tonight on Olympus, Luke said. I have known for 4 months. Kronos has known for longer and has not told me, because he is hoping if I do not know I will fight a little harder. I have done the math 3 times with 3 sets of assumptions, and I lose them all. The gods are going to hold. They are going to hold because the man you call Dumbledore has quietly, without announcing it, arranged for certain wizarding allies to flank the Manhattan elevators in case of an Olympian emergency. And because the oceans, it turns out, like the boy in the orange t-shirt more than I thought they did, and because a 15-year-old girl who once memorized my face has spent the last 2 years teaching every Hermes camper how to betray me. I lose, Hadrian. I have lost. The only live question is how much I take with me. Luke, hear me out. All right. Kronos has offered me 1 way to win, Luke said. 1. He has not offered it before tonight because he was not sure I could survive it. He is sure tonight. He is sure because the basilisk is dead and the venom is on your belt, and the boy who would have died of that venom did not, because he used a phoenix's tear he had prepared, which means the boy is. Luke's voice caught for a moment. Hadrian, my boy, I am saying all of this, and it is all about you. Harry kept his hand on the altar. Tell me, he said. Kronos says, Luke said, each word precise, that if you will take the other scrap of Voldemort willingly, if you open your scar and let the second fragment merge with the first, and then let me guide Kronos through the merging, you will be the one thing the gods cannot plan for. A boy of 4 shadows, Hermes raised, Horcrux inhabited, mother's love shielded, Titan channeled. You will be a doorway wide enough for him to walk through whole. He will take you in the way he intends to take me. And with you he does not lose on the solstice. He does not lose at all. He is the one thing he has not tried, not a vessel but a frame, a worked frame, a boy 4 times cooked. With you he eats them. All of them, the thrones, the castle, my father, your father, the whole. He stopped. The whole sky, which is what I said I wanted when I was 14, which I said to you when you were a year old on a boat, which I have said to you in one form or another since. Harry was quiet for a long moment. The altar under his hand was very warm. So that is your offer, Harry said. Yes, not me fighting beside you, me becoming you. Me becoming him, Luke said, you becoming me. And him walking through us both. Yes, that is the offer. From Kronos. From me, Luke said. Kronos made the offer to me. I am making it to you. I will not put it on him. Harry watched Luke's face. Luke's face was, for the first time in Harry's memory, entirely unguarded. His eyes were very bright. I have been raising you for this, Luke said. I am telling you that. I am looking at you and saying it. I knew it the night I took you out of the crib. I felt you under my hand and I thought, this is the one. This is the one that lets us do it. I told myself other things afterward, that I would protect you, that I loved you as a son. I did love you as a son. I will not walk away from the loving. I will walk away from the lie about the reason. I took you because you were going to be something, and I wanted you to be it for me. Harry had known this for a year. He had known it since the Sorting Hat had shown him the green door. He had known the shape of it anyway. He had not quite known the weight. I know, he said. You knew. The hat told me. It told me in the first 10 minutes of my first night at that castle. Luke went very white around the mouth. Then he said, why are you here? Because you are the only father I have ever had, Harry said, and I owe you this conversation, because I wanted you to say it out loud to me once. You never said it out loud. That was the last thing you were doing right by me. I wanted you to say it so I could hear you say it, and you could hear yourself say it, and then I could answer. Answer. No, Luke, the altar under Harry's hand went cold. No, Harry said again calmly. Not tonight, not on the solstice, not ever. I am not taking the fragment in my forehead into my heart. I am not giving Kronos a frame. I am not becoming you. I will not be your weapon after death. I am not a sheath for your regret. Luke, for one brief moment, looked exactly like a 24-year-old boy. Hadrian, please, number, I am sorry. Number, the temple was very still. Under their feet, very far down, the warmth in the altar stone became something hotter, and then something colder again, and then it stopped being anything at all. Ah, said Kronos from under the stone, quite mildly. A pity. Well, Luke, I am here. He said number, then you will be the vessel, my dear boy. As we always knew I would have to make do with you. I am ready when you are. Luke looked at Harry for the last time as only Luke. When I come back through this stone, he said quietly, I will not be me. I will look like me. I will speak like me some of the time. I will be him. The moment that body on the altar is not me, Hadrian, you do not hesitate. That is the last thing I teach you. Yes, yes, Harry said, and his voice cracked in a way it had not cracked in 10 years of training. Luke looked at him with something Harry decided afterward he would not try to translate. I love you, boy, he said. He stepped onto the altar. Harry stood with his hand still on the stone for one more moment. He closed his eyes. The altar under his hand went hot again. When he opened his eyes, Luke's face was wearing someone else's. Nicely done, Kronos said in Luke's mouth through Luke's teeth. Now, Olympus, come along, son of Potter, you can still watch. I think not, Harry said. Kronos smiled wide. You think you can stop me now? I think I can stop him, Harry said without moving, and I think you are still figuring out where his elbows are. You are not ready to duel a trained Hermes boy for 20 seconds yet. You are going to need 30 minutes to learn his body. You do not have 30 minutes. The sun rises on the solstice in 83 minutes. You need to be at Olympus before then. If you fight me here, you lose your window. You have to take the shortcut he has plotted. You have to leave. I will see you on the mountain. Kronos tilted Luke's head, considering him. You are not wrong, he said pleasantly. Very well. See you on the mountain, boy. He stepped off the altar and was gone in a long blue-gold wrench of air. Harry stood in the empty temple. He dropped to his knees. He put his forehead on the warm altar stone. He did not cry. He did not have the machinery for crying. Luke had not given it to him. He stayed like that for 1 minute. Then he stood up. He put his hand on the basilisk fang at his belt. He put his hand on the wand up his sleeve. He put his hand on the lead-lined pocket with the list of Horcruxes and the Hecate disc and the dry, quieted, shut-up diary. He took a breath. And then he stepped through the same shortcut Kronos had opened in the air, because a Hermes boy is never the only one who knows a travel hinge when he sees it, and he came out on the Empire State Building's 600th floor with Percy Jackson's sword at his throat. It's him, Annabeth said. Percy, put it down. Percy, put it down. That was faster than I expected, Harry said steadily. Luke has 20 minutes on me. He is coming up the elevator. He has Kronos in him. You need archers on the north rim. You need the son of Poseidon, and the son of Hades is the son of Hades here. He is, Annabeth said, good, on the south rim. You need the daughter of Athena running the middle and not fighting on either flank, because the middle is going to have to improvise 3 times. Why are you giving me orders? Because I know his tells, Harry said simply. I have watched him fight for 8 years. I can tell you which shoulder he drops in the third exchange. Annabeth looked at him for a long moment. All right, she said. All right, South Rim Nico, Percy with me. Hermione. Harry said. A small brown-haired girl stepped out from behind a column at the foot of a statue of Demeter with a wand in her hand and a satchel and a set expression. I'm here, Harry, Hermione Granger said steadily. Professor Dumbledore sent me. He said you would be here. He said I was to be the person who brought you the choice. What choice? The choice of whether you wanted him here too, Hermione said. She took out a phoenix feather and held it up. Harry looked at it. Tell him yes, he said quietly. Tell him I want him here. Hermione crushed the feather in her hand. In the air over Olympus, in a streak of flame that made the sky ripple for a city block in each direction, Albus Dumbledore arrived on the back of Fawkes, with his old wand in one hand and his half-moon spectacles tilted, and he looked down at the small Slytherin first year on the forecourt and said softly, Good evening, Harry. Where shall I stand? With me, Harry said. Ah, Dumbledore's mouth, below the spectacles, did a small, thin, weary smile. Very good, excellent. They took their positions. What happened next was short, all great battles are short. The myths expand them because the myths have to fill time. What happened in linear hours took 32 minutes. Luke Kronos came up the Empire State Elevator at 6:07. He walked out onto the forecourt and he took the head off a son of Athena with a single sweep of Luke's sword, and he kept walking. He broke through the North Rim in 2 minutes. Nico D'Angelo on the South Rim turned up an army of the honored dead that nearly slowed him and got Nico a long cane cut down one arm. Percy Jackson, at his flank, poured the reservoirs of Manhattan up the elevator shaft in a sheet and slowed him by seconds. Annabeth in the middle saw him come toward the throne room and did not fight him. She stepped aside as he had not expected her to and left the throne room's doorway empty. Kronos walked through the empty doorway. In the throne room, 12 gods stood from 12 thrones except Hestia at the hearth, who did not stand. Zeus did the usual thing Zeus did. Poseidon backed him. Hermes, pale, did not look away from his son's hijacked body. Hera, Apollo, Artemis, Ares, Athena, Aphrodite, Hephaestus, Demeter, Dionysus, all of them arrayed, all of them pretending to the kind of confidence they had lost hours earlier. Kronos smiled wider with Luke's mouth. "Oh my," he said, "children." Behind him, unnoticed, a small Slytherin first year stepped in through the door. A thin old wizard with a bronze blade no one in the Greek pantheon had seen in a very long time followed him in and took up a position, silently, to the rear. Harry raised his voice. It was the voice that had spoken to Firenze. It was the voice that had spoken to Tom Riddle. It was the voice the Hat had said was the voice of the boy who was becoming himself. Kronos. Kronos turned, Luke's body moving a half-second too slowly to be a Hermes boy's turn, a tell. "Ah," Kronos said. "The boy, where have you been?" "Coming," Harry said. "Luke." Something behind Luke's eyes, very briefly, flickered. "He is not available, child. He is under. Attend to the conversation you are actually having." "Luke," Harry said again, and he took one step forward inside the reach of Luke's sword, which was where Kronos did not expect him to be because Luke would never have let him stand there. Kronos swung. Harry ducked on instinct under Luke's left shoulder, the shoulder that dropped in the third exchange. This was the third exchange. He had been counting and came up with the basilisk fang in his hand, and he put it not into Luke's body but against Luke's palm, softly, closing Luke's own hand around the grip. "Luke," Harry said, "this is for you." Kronos, in Luke's body, started to say something. His teeth went about a quarter of the way through the syllable. Luke's eyes came back. They were only his for about 2 seconds. It was enough. "Good man," Luke said hoarsely. "Good man, good man, good." He drew the fang across his own chest. The basilisk venom, which was death to anything that was trying to host another soul, met the titan echo inside Luke and bit through it the way a hot wire bites through wax. Kronos wrenched and screamed, not aloud, but in the marrow of every god in the throne room, and tried to pull himself out of the dying vessel to find another. There was no other. Luke had chosen the moment. Luke had chosen the spot. Luke had at the last locked the door behind him. The throne room went bright briefly with a light Harry recognized from the altar. Then the light was gone. Luke Castellan crumpled in the throne room of Olympus. Harry on his knees caught him. He did not try to hold him up. He laid him down. Luke weighed for a moment the weight he had weighed when Harry was 2 and fell asleep on his chest. "I love you, boy," Luke whispered barely. "I know. Tell Annabeth I will." "Good, Luke." "Yes." "I love you too." Luke's mouth did its most particular small smile, the one it did when a child of his had finally said a thing Luke had waited years to hear and would not live long enough to savor, and then his eyes unfocused, and then he was empty. Harry closed his eyes for 2 seconds, then he opened them and stood up. 12 gods looked down at him. He did not bow, he did not kneel, he did not speak first. Hermes was the first to move. Hermes came forward and sank to his knees beside the body of his son, and put his hand on his son's hair and bowed his head. Hermes did not weep as mortals weep, but a small weight out of the god of thresholds came down and rested on the floor of the throne room and did not lift again. Zeus opened his mouth to speak. Athena said very quietly without looking at Zeus, "No, brother, not yet, let the boy begin." Zeus closed his mouth. Harry stood with his hands at his sides. "I am not a god," he said evenly. "I am not an Olympian. I am not yours. I fought for you because the alternative was worse. You owe me nothing. I am here to ask you for 3 things anyway, because you are embarrassed enough right now that you will give them. I would like the embarrassment used." Athena smiled. It was the smallest possible smile. It did not reach her eyes. It reached her mouth. "Ask, son of Potter." 1. Sirius Black, pardon, tonight. By tomorrow morning your counterparts in the wizarding world will be made to understand that he was innocent and is under the protection of the Olympian Council. I will not accept we will look into it. I will accept it is done. That is the first. Done, said Athena without looking at the others. Zeus, who had not yet been asked, began to say something. Hera laid her hand on his wrist. Zeus, with some effort, stopped saying it. 2. Every unclaimed demigod at Camp Half-Blood claimed by name, by the parent responsible, by Friday. You have a backlog. Harry's voice did not break. Started it for the right reason. I am finishing it for a different reason. Claim them, no exceptions. Not the children you are embarrassed by, not the ones you have forgotten, not the ones in orange t-shirts you hoped wouldn't mean anything to you, all of them, by name. Poseidon across the hall looked at Athena once and then on his own nodded. Done, he said, for all of them. Harry nodded back, very small, just once. 3. The diadem of Ravenclaw is in the room of requirement at Hogwarts. The locket of Slytherin is at number 12 Grimmauld Place. The cup of Helga Hufflepuff is in the Lestrange vault at Gringotts. The ring of the Gaunts is under a floor in a shack in Little Hangleton. The final piece, this piece, he touched very lightly his own forehead. This I will deal with, all the others are yours to deal with. I want them gone before the new school year begins. If the wizarding authorities will not cooperate, I want Olympian pressure brought. You have never pressured them before, now is a good time to start. Athena looked finally at him with her whole attention. That is a very specific third thing, she said. It is, you have thought about it. I have. You intend to destroy Voldemort yourself. Yes. Why? Because Harry said he killed my parents and my parents were coming, and he was the reason they did not make it through their door in time, and that is not a debt I will let anyone else collect. Athena inclined her head very slightly. Done, she said. Harry nodded again. Thank you, he said. That concludes the official business. If any one of you wishes to speak to me personally, I will hear one of you. One, not two, not all 12. One, choose. There was a silence. Hermes looked up from his son's hair. His eyes were wet and his face was 10,000 years old. Me, Hermes said. Zeus, for once in the entire history of the universe, did not object. Harry walked toward him, stepping around Luke's body, around, not over. He did not look down. He would look down later. He crouched across from Hermes so that the body of Luke was between them. He put his small hand very briefly on Luke's hand. Say it, he said quietly. I failed him, Hermes said. Yes, I failed him because he asked me for things I could have given and I did not give them. I failed him because I thought being a god meant not coming down. I failed him because I looked at my own son and I saw a problem I could not solve and I let him be instead of trying to solve him. Yes, I failed you too, grandson of a kind. Harry did not flinch. Thank you for saying it, he said. Are you going to forgive me? Number Hermes nodded once. Good, he said. Good, that is right. Do not forgive me. I will not, Harry said. I will also not hunt you. You have one task to do in exchange for what I am not doing. Tell Annabeth the truth about him, the whole truth. I don't want her to have to find it out in pieces for the rest of her life. You were his father, you tell her all of it. Hermes closed his eyes. Yes, he said at last. Yes, I will. Good. Harry stood. He walked, without speaking to any other god, out of the throne room. Annabeth met him at the door. She did not say anything. She did not try to hold him. She walked very quietly beside him, and then Percy was on his other side, and then they were out of the throne room and out on the forecourt, where the first light of a solstice dawn was coming up over Manhattan's skyline and turning the bronze swords of the hundreds of demigods and wizards lying wounded in the streets below a specific kind of gold. Sirius was at the edge of the forecourt. He had come up the elevator an hour into the battle on Mrs. Weasley's second cousin's hippogriff and had, without speaking to anyone, set about cleaning the injured satyrs off the south rim. He was bloody to the elbow. He saw Harry's face. He stopped working. He stepped away from the satyr he was working on and opened his arms. Harry walked into them. He did not cry in the throne room. He did not cry walking out. He did not cry in his godfather's arms either. But he leaned his face into Sirius's neck for a long moment and he did not move and Sirius did not move and neither of them said anything and the Manhattan sky went a little bit brighter. We'll be here, Sirius said finally. I don't mean me, I mean all of us. There's going to be a lot of us, pup, for the rest of it. You don't have to do the rest of it alone. You are 11, you are 11. I know. I say it aloud to make the universe hear it. Thank you. Across the forecourt, Dumbledore stood, somewhat apart, with Fawkes on his shoulder, waiting. Harry stepped back from Sirius. He straightened his robes. He walked across to Dumbledore. Sir, Harry, thank you for coming. Thank you for asking, dear boy. They stood for a moment in silence. Fawkes, Harry noticed, was looking at him with the particular patience of a bird who has cried into a vial for a student before and approves of the use the student put it to. I have, Dumbledore said at last, a school that could use you, Harry. I know. You may be Slytherin in it or not Slytherin in it or both, as you choose. I will not put a prophecy in front of you. I will not put a destiny in front of you. I will put, perhaps, the occasional lemon drop. Harry's mouth did a small almost smile for the first time in 2 days. That sounds suspicious, sir. It is, the drops are terrible. I recommend the fizzing Whizbees. Harry considered him. I'm going to finish something first, he said. I told you what I am finishing. I know. I'm going to finish it with Sirius, not with you, not at school. You are not invited to that part. I understand. You will want to send people to help. I will restrain myself. Good. When you are done, Dumbledore said very gently, and when you have a little time to decide what you want to be called when you come to my gates, and I do not know what that will be, Harry, I will not press you on the name, you will come. You will come and you will sit for a term or a year or 7 years as it suits you. You will make friends, you will read books, you will perhaps teach me. You will be 11 and then 12 and then a sequence of numbers after that, and it will be slow and it will be boring, and boring will be a mercy after this. Harry looked up at him. I would like that, he said after a moment, and his voice, for the first time in the whole solstice morning, sounded exactly like an 11-year-old's voice. Dumbledore's face did an old thing. His eyes went shiny. He did not let them. He nodded. I will wait, he said quietly. Harry turned and walked back to Sirius and to Annabeth and to Percy, and the 4 of them stood on the forecourt of Olympus in the solstice light, and Hermes, below, continued to sit beside his son, and a dozen gods began, for the first time in many centuries, to send messengers down the mortal side of the mountain with names on the messages. On the wall of the forecourt in the gold light, the scar on Harry's forehead, thin, neat, 11 years old, was pale for the first time. The smudge under the scar was still humming, a little. Harry put his hand up to his own forehead and felt the hum very gently, the way one puts a finger on the lip of a kettle to be sure it is not yet boiling. He closed his eyes. He thought, I know where the others are. I know what to do with you. Not today. I have a whole rest of my life, and I am going to take it slowly, and I am going to take it with these people. You can wait. So can I. He opened his eyes. Below, Manhattan came awake. He was, for the first time in a life that had been other people's for 11 years, his own. Not a chosen one, a chooser. Chapter 6 End.